The cold December wind bit through Julian Pierce's expensive wool coat as he stood outside Metropolitan Children's Hospital, his body shaking with sobs he could no longer control. His phone had slipped from his hands moments ago, clattering onto the icy sidewalk where it now lay displaying the words that had shattered his carefully constructed world. "Your son's condition has deteriorated. Come immediately." 42 years old, worth over $3 billion, owner of Pierce Industries, featured on magazine covers, respected by world leaders, and here he stood, broken and helpless outside a hospital because he had spent the last 3 years choosing boardrooms over his son's bedroom, conference calls over family dinners, international deals over Tyler's basketball games. The irony cut deeper than any business rival's betrayal ever could. He had everything, controlled everything, could buy anything except the one thing that mattered most: time with his dying son. Julian's legs gave out, and he sank onto the cold concrete steps, his perfectly pressed navy suit getting dusted with snow. He buried his face in his hands, his shoulders heaving with the weight of regrets too heavy to carry anymore. 3 years ago, when cancer had taken his wife Rebecca, he had made a choice. Instead of grieving with Tyler, instead of holding his 13-year-old son through the nightmare of losing his mother, Julian had buried himself in work. He had told himself he was providing for Tyler's future, ensuring financial security, building an empire his son could inherit. But the truth, the ugly truth he finally acknowledged on these frozen steps, was that work was easier than feeling, business was simpler than grief, and money could not hug you back. "Sir, are you okay?" A small voice broke through his spiral of despair. Julian looked up through tear-blurred eyes to find a little girl standing before him. She could not have been more than 7 years old, with beautiful dark skin that seemed to glow even in the harsh winter evening, and hair pulled back in 2 neat puffs decorated with bright red ribbons. She wore a puffy green coat that was slightly too big for her, and her brown eyes held a wisdom that seemed far beyond her years. "I'm sorry," Julian managed, his voice rough and broken. He tried to wipe his face to compose himself, but the tears kept coming. "I'm fine, sweetheart. You should go inside where it's warm." The little girl tilted her head, studying him with the kind of directness only children possess. "You don't look fine. You look like how I looked when my goldfish Bubbles died. Mama says crying is okay because it means your heart is working." Despite everything, Julian felt a tiny smile crack through his despair. "Your mama sounds very smart." "She is," the girl said proudly. "She's a nurse here. She helps sick kids feel better." "Are you here because someone you love is sick?" Julian nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. The little girl stepped closer, seemingly unbothered by his tears or the fact that he was a complete stranger. She reached out and patted his hand with her small, mittened one. "Don't cry, sir. I have an idea." She paused dramatically, and Julian found himself actually curious about what this tiny person would suggest. "You can borrow my mom." "I'm sorry, what?" Julian blinked, certain he had misheard. "My mom," the girl repeated patiently as if explaining something obvious. "She's really good at making people feel better. She always knows what to say when I'm sad. And she gives the best hugs in the whole world. Since you look like you need a mom right now, you can borrow mine. I don't mind sharing." Julian stared at this child, this complete stranger who had just offered him the most genuine act of kindness he had experienced in years. In his world of calculated business moves, strategic partnerships, and transactional relationships, here was a 7-year-old offering to share the most precious thing she had because a stranger was crying. "That's very kind of you," Julian said, his voice thick with emotion. "But I couldn't possibly." "Bria Johnson, what have I told you about talking to strangers?" A woman's voice, warm but firm, interrupted them. Julian looked up to see a woman in bright blue scrubs approaching them quickly, concern evident on her face. She was beautiful, with rich brown skin and kind eyes that currently held a mixture of worry and mild exasperation. "But Mama, he's crying," Bria explained, pointing at Julian as if that justified everything. "I told him he could borrow you because you're good at making sad people feel better. You do it every day at work." The woman, apparently Bria's mother, reached them and gently pulled her daughter close. Her eyes met Julian's, and he saw the moment her expression shifted from wariness to recognition, then to professional concern. "I apologize for my daughter. She has a very big heart, sometimes without boundaries." She paused, really looking at Julian for the first time. "Are you all right, sir? Do you need medical assistance?" Julian stood up shakily, suddenly aware of how he must look. Expensive suit rumpled, face red and wet with tears, sitting on hospital steps in the snow. "I'm fine. My son is inside. He's 16. Tyler Pierce. They just called me." His condition has gotten worse. Recognition flickered across the woman's face. You're Tyler's father. It was not a question but a statement, and Julian could not quite read the tone. She knew Tyler. Of course she did. Tyler had been in this hospital for 2 weeks after collapsing at school. 2 weeks during which Julian had visited maybe 5 times, always rushing in and out between meetings, always promising to stay longer next time. I'm Naomi Johnson, the woman said, her voice softening slightly. I'm one of the nurses on the pediatric floor. Tyler is under Dr. Richardson's care, but I've checked on him several times. He's a brave young man. He's dying, Julian said flatly, the words tasting like ash in his mouth. And he won't even let me sit in his room because he hates me. And I deserve it. I deserve all of it. Naomi exchanged a glance with her daughter, then made a decision. Bria, honey, go inside and wait for me in the staff lounge. Ask Miss Gloria for a hot chocolate. But Mama. Now baby. Please. Naomi's tone left no room for argument. Bria looked between her mother and Julian, then gave Julian one last pat on the hand. Don't worry, sir. Mama will help you. She always helps everybody. With that, she skipped toward the hospital entrance, her green coat bright against the white snow. Once Bria was inside, Naomi turned her full attention to Julian. Mr. Pierce, I'm not going to pretend to know your situation or judge your relationship with your son. But I will tell you this, it's not too late. Tyler is scared and angry, yes, but he's also just a boy who needs his father. You don't understand, Julian said, his voice breaking again. I failed him. I failed Rebecca. When she died, I should have been there for him, but I ran. I buried myself in work because I didn't know how to handle the grief. And now my son is in there, possibly dying, and he hates me and I don't know how to fix it. Have you ever realized too late that you've lost what matters most while chasing things that don't? If this story touches your heart, please subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments. Your story might inspire someone who needs to hear it. Naomi was quiet for a moment, her breath forming small clouds in the cold air. Mr. Pierce, can I ask you something? If someone offered you help right now, any kind of help, would you take it? Julian looked at her, confused by the question. What kind of help? Any kind, Naomi repeated. Financial, emotional, practical. If someone stood here and said, let me help you, would you let them or would your pride get in the way? I don't need financial help, Julian said automatically, then caught himself. But if you're asking whether I'd accept help to fix my relationship with my son, to learn how to be the father he needs, then yes. God, yes. I'd do anything. Naomi nodded slowly. Then here's what you're going to do. You're going to go inside, wash your face, and go to Tyler's room. You're not going to make promises you can't keep or try to fix everything at once. You're just going to sit there. Even if he doesn't want to talk to you, you sit there. You show up. Consistently. That's where it starts. What if he asks me to leave? Julian's voice was small, vulnerable. Then you come back the next day. And the day after that. You keep showing up until he believes you're not going to disappear again. Naomi pulled her coat tighter against the wind. Mr. Pierce, I've worked in this hospital for 8 years. I've seen families torn apart by illness and grief. I've also seen families rebuilt. But it only works when people choose to be present, to accept help and to give grace, both to others and themselves. Julian nodded, something like hope stirring in his chest for the first time in hours. Thank you, Ms. Johnson. And please thank your daughter. She offered me something nobody else has in a very long time. Simple, genuine kindness. A small smile touched Naomi's lips. That's Bria. She sees the world as a place where everyone helps everyone. I'm trying to keep that light in her as long as possible. She paused, then added, my shift ends in 3 hours. If you need someone to talk to after you see Tyler, I'll be in the 4th floor staff lounge. Sometimes it helps to talk to someone who understands what families go through in places like this. Why would you do that? Julian asked, genuinely puzzled. You don't know me. No, but I know your son. And I know what it looks like when someone is genuinely trying to change. Also, my daughter literally offered to loan me out to you, so I suppose I should honor that commitment. This time, her smile reached her eyes. Julian found himself smiling back, a genuine smile for the first time in what felt like forever. I'll take you up on that offer. Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Call me Naomi, she said. Now go. Your son needs to see you even if he doesn't know it yet. Julian watched Naomi walk toward the hospital entrance, her blue scrubs bright against the winter evening, and felt something shift inside him. A stranger and her daughter had shown him more compassion in 10 minutes than he had experienced in years of business dealings. And they had taught him something crucial. Accepting help was not weakness. It was the first step toward healing. He picked up his phone from the sidewalk, brushed off the snow, and walked toward the hospital doors. Inside, the warmth hit him immediately, along with the familiar smell of antiseptic and the sounds of beeping machines and quiet conversations. Julian made his way to the men's room, where he splashed cold water on his face and tried to compose himself. The man staring back at him in the mirror looked older than 42, with lines of stress etched around his eyes and mouth. "You can do this," he told his reflection. "Just show up. That's all you have to do. Show up." 10 minutes later, Julian stood outside room 412, his heart pounding. Through the small window in the door, he could see Tyler lying in the hospital bed, looking so much smaller and younger than his 16 years. The boy had his mother's features, her light brown hair and hazel eyes, and seeing him always made Julian's heart ache with loss and love and regret. Julian knocked softly and entered without waiting for permission. Tyler's head turned toward the door, and his expression immediately hardened when he saw his father. "What are you doing here?" Tyler's voice was hoarse, tired. "Don't you have a meeting in Tokyo or London or somewhere that's not here?" The words stung, but Julian had expected them. "You deserve them. I'm here for you, Tyler. Dr. Richardson called me about your complications. So you came out of obligation. Great. You can leave now and tell everyone you did your fatherly duty." Tyler turned his face away, staring at the wall. Julian pulled a chair close to the bed and sat down. "I'm not leaving, son." "Don't call me that," Tyler snapped, his voice breaking. "You lost the right to call me that when you chose your company over your own kid." The accusation hung in the air between them, sharp and painful and true. Julian took a deep breath, remembering Naomi's advice. "Don't make promises you can't keep. Just be present." "You're right," Julian said quietly. "I did choose wrong. When your mom died, I ran away instead of being there for you. I convinced myself I was working hard for your future, but the truth is I was just scared. Scared of facing the grief, scared of being a single parent, scared of failing you the way I felt like I'd failed your mother by not being able to save her." Tyler remained silent, but Julian could see his jaw tightening, a sign he was listening. "I know sorry isn't enough," Julian continued. "I know showing up now after months of being absent doesn't erase the times I missed your games, your awards, your life. But Tyler, I'm here now. And I'm not going anywhere. Even if you hate me, even if you don't want me here, I'm staying. You're my son and I love you and I'm done running away." For a long moment, the only sound in the room was the steady beep of the heart monitor. Then Tyler spoke, his voice barely a whisper. "Mom would be so disappointed in you." The words were a knife to Julian's heart, but they were also true. "I know. I'm disappointed in myself. But I think she'd also want me to try to make things right. And that's what I'm going to do. Starting now. Starting here." Tyler finally turned to look at him, and Julian was startled to see tears streaming down his son's face. "I'm scared, Dad. I'm so scared. What if I don't get better? What if I end up like Mom?" Without thinking, Julian moved to the bed and carefully wrapped his arms around his son, mindful of the various tubes and monitors. Tyler stiffened for a moment, then collapsed against him, sobbing into his father's expensive suit jacket. "I'm here," Julian whispered, his own tears falling freely now. "I'm here and I'm not leaving. We're going to get through this together. I promise you, Tyler. I'm done being absent. I'm done prioritizing everything else over you." They stayed like that for a long time, father and son, holding each other in a way they hadn't since Rebecca died. And for the first time in 3 years, Julian felt like maybe, just maybe, he could find his way back to being the father Tyler needed. When Tyler finally pulled away, exhausted from the emotional outburst, he lay back against his pillows. "Will you really stay?" he asked, his voice small and uncertain. "Every day," Julian promised. "As long as you're here, I'm here. Work can wait. Everything else can wait. Nothing is more important than you." Tyler's eyes drifted closed, the medication and emotional exhaustion pulling him toward sleep. "Okay, Dad. Okay." Julian sat back in his chair, watching his son's chest rise and fall with steady breaths, and felt something he hadn't felt in years: hope. Real, genuine hope that maybe it was not too late to fix what he had broken. Maybe it was not too late to become the father he should have been all along. 3 hours later, as promised, Julian found himself in the 4th-floor staff lounge. Naomi was there, still in her scrubs, sitting at a small table with a cup of tea. Bria was asleep on a couch nearby, covered with a colorful blanket, her green coat folded neatly beside her. "How did it go?" Naomi asked, gesturing to the chair across from her. Julian sat down heavily, suddenly aware of how emotionally and physically exhausted he was. He let me hold him. We both cried. He's still angry and he has every right to be, but he asked me to stay. He actually asked me to stay. Naomi's smile was warm and genuine. That's a good start, Mr. Pierce. That's a very good start. Please call me Julian, he said. And thank you. For earlier. For the advice. For caring about a stranger falling apart on hospital steps. We're all just people trying to do our best, Naomi said simply. Sometimes we need help. Sometimes we give it. That's how the world should work. Julian looked at this woman, this nurse who had shown him more grace than he deserved, and felt compelled to ask, "Do you have family here? Someone taking care of you while you take care of everyone else?" A shadow passed over Naomi's face. "It's just Bria and me. And my father, but he's sick too. Different hospital, different state. He has heart disease, needs a transplant, but the costs." She shook her head. "I'm working double shifts to help, but it's never quite enough. The healthcare system is complicated when you're not wealthy." Julian straightened in his chair, an idea forming. Here was someone who had helped him without asking for anything in return, someone who gave so much to others while struggling herself. And here he sat, a man with more money than he could spend in several lifetimes. "Let me help," Julian said immediately. "Your father, whatever he needs, the transplant, the care, I can cover it. All of it." Naomi's eyes widened and she shook her head quickly. "Mr. Pierce, Julian, I appreciate the thought, but I can't accept that. That's too much. You don't even know me." "You helped me tonight when I needed it most," Julian countered. "Your daughter offered me her mother because she saw someone in pain. You gave me advice that might have just saved my relationship with my son. Please let me do this. Not as charity but as gratitude. As kindness being paid forward." Naomi bit her lip, clearly torn. Julian could see the pride warring with practicality in her eyes, the desire to handle things herself fighting against the reality of her situation. "Your father needs help," Julian said gently. "And you're killing yourself working double shifts while trying to raise Bria alone. Let me help. Please. I need to do something good with all this money I've accumulated while ignoring what really matters." Naomi's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "You're serious? You really mean this?" "Completely serious," Julian confirmed. "Give me the details. The hospital, the doctors, the treatment plan. I'll have everything arranged by tomorrow. Your father will get the best care available, and you can focus on being present with him and Bria instead of drowning in medical bills." For a moment, Naomi just stared at him, and Julian worried he had somehow offended her. But then she nodded slowly, tears now streaming down her face. Okay, yes. Thank you. I don't know what to say except thank you. You're giving my dad a chance to live. You're giving me my father back." "No," Julian said softly, "you and your daughter gave me something far more valuable. You gave me perspective and hope, and a reminder that kindness still exists in the world. This is the least I can do." They talked for another hour, Naomi giving him all the information about her father's situation while Bria slept peacefully nearby. By the time Julian left the hospital that night, he had already called his assistant to begin arrangements for transferring Naomi's father to the best cardiac center in the country and covering all expenses. He had also made a decision that would change all their lives. He was taking an immediate leave of absence from Pierce Industries to focus on Tyler's recovery. As Julian drove home through the quiet, snow-covered streets, he replayed the evening's events in his mind. A little girl with red ribbons in her hair had told him he could borrow her mother. That simple, innocent offer had cracked open something in his heart that he had thought was permanently closed. It had reminded him that the world still held good people, that kindness was not transactional, and that accepting help was not weakness but wisdom. Tomorrow he would return to the hospital and sit with Tyler. He would show up every single day. He would rebuild their relationship one moment at a time. He would also make sure Naomi's father got the treatment he needed and that this family who had shown him such unexpected grace would be supported in every way possible. But tonight, for the first time in 3 years, Julian Pierce went to bed feeling something he had forgotten how to feel: grateful. Grateful that he had broken down on those hospital steps. Grateful for a 7-year-old's boundless compassion. Grateful for a second chance he did not deserve but would spend the rest of his life earning. Outside, snow continued to fall softly over the city, covering everything in clean white, like the promise of a new beginning. And somewhere in that same city, a little girl slept peacefully in her small apartment, unaware that her simple act of kindness had started a chain reaction that would change multiple lives forever. The man who had everything was beginning to understand that he had actually had nothing at all. And the woman who had so little was about to discover that sometimes the universe sends help in the most unexpected packages. Their lives had intersected on a cold December evening, brought together by a child's pure heart and the simple truth that hope, kindness, and love, when given freely, always find a way to lead everyone home. Morning light filtered through the hospital windows as Julian sat in Tyler's room, watching his son sleep. True to his word, he had returned at dawn, bringing with him changes that would have seemed impossible 24 hours ago. His phone rested on the bedside table, powered off for the first time in years. His assistant had sent 3 increasingly frantic emails overnight that Julian had ignored. The business world would continue without him, and that was exactly as it should be. Tyler stirred, his eyes opening slowly before focusing on Julian still sitting in the same chair from the night before. Surprise flickered across the teenager's face. "You're still here." "I said I would be," Julian replied simply. "Good morning, son." Tyler studied him for a long moment, as if trying to determine whether this was real or temporary. "Did you sleep in that chair?" "For a few hours," Julian admitted. "I went home around midnight to shower and change, then came back." "I'm not going anywhere, Tyler. Not today, not tomorrow. I've taken a leave of absence from work." "What?" Tyler pushed himself up against his pillows, wincing slightly at the movement. "You took time off?" "You never take time off." "I should have taken time off 3 years ago," Julian said. "I should have taken time off for every basketball game, every school event, every moment of your life that I missed. I'm correcting that now." Before Tyler could respond, a knock sounded at the door. Naomi entered, pushing a medication cart, with Bria bouncing along beside her. The little girl's face lit up when she saw Julian. "The crying man from yesterday," Bria announced cheerfully, causing both Julian and Tyler to laugh. "Are you still sad, sir?" "Bria, we talked about this," Naomi said, though her own lips twitched with amusement. "Sorry about that, Mr. Pierce. Someone has no filter this morning." "It's okay," Julian smiled at Bria. "And to answer your question, I'm less sad today than yesterday. You and your mom helped with that." "See, Mama?" Bria beamed. "I told you sharing you would work." Tyler looked between them, clearly curious. "Sharing?" "Long story," Julian said. "I'll tell you later." Naomi checked Tyler's vitals and administered medication while maintaining a professional demeanor, but Julian noticed the warmth in her eyes when she looked at his son. "How are you feeling this morning, Tyler?" "Any pain?" "A little," Tyler admitted. "But it's okay." "You should tell us when you're in pain," Naomi said gently. "That's what we're here for. We can adjust your medication to make you more comfortable." "Mama makes everybody feel better," Bria chimed in, now standing on her tiptoes to peer at the various monitors. "She has magic hands." "Not quite magic," Naomi said, ruffling her daughter's hair. "Just nursing school and lots of practice." As Naomi worked, Julian watched how naturally she interacted with Tyler, how her presence seemed to ease some of his son's tension. She had a gift for making people feel seen and cared for, not as patients but as human beings. It was no wonder Bria was such a compassionate child with this woman as her mother. "Mr. Pierce," Naomi said as she finished her checks, "Dr. Richardson wants to speak with you this morning about Tyler's treatment plan. He should be making rounds within the hour." "I'll be here," Julian confirmed. "And Naomi, I meant what I said last night. I've already set things in motion for your father's transfer. My team is coordinating with his current facility now." Naomi's eyes widened, and her professional composure cracked slightly. "Already? I thought you might need more time to arrange everything." "When something matters, you don't wait," Julian said. "He should be transferred to Central Memorial's Cardiac Center by this afternoon. Dr. Patricia Okoye will be his primary physician. She's the best in the country." Tyler looked confused. "Dad, what's going on?" Before Julian could answer, Naomi spoke up, her voice thick with emotion. "Your father is helping my dad. He needs a heart transplant and the costs have been overwhelming. Your father has offered to cover everything." "Seriously?" Tyler looked at his father with surprise. That's actually really cool, Dad." "Your father is very kind," Naomi said, wiping at her eyes quickly. "I'm sorry, I don't usually get emotional at work. It's just, you're giving my family hope. Real hope. I can't thank you enough." "No thanks necessary," Julian said firmly. "You helped me when I needed it. Let me help you." Bria, who had been listening intently, suddenly rushed over to Julian and hugged his legs tightly. "Thank you for helping my grandpa," she said, her voice muffled against his pants. He tells the best stories and I don't want him to go away like Bubbles did. Julian knelt down to her level, gently returning the hug. I'm going to do everything I can to make sure he gets better so he can tell you many more stories. When was the last time you let someone help you without letting pride get in the way? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and if this story is touching your heart, please subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. After Naomi and Bria left to continue their rounds, Tyler spoke up. Dad, that was a good thing you did. Mom would have liked that. She always said we should help people when we can. Your mother was right about many things, Julian said, settling back into his chair. I'm trying to remember that now. Trying to be the kind of person she believed I could be. They spent the morning talking, carefully at first, then with increasing openness. Tyler told Julian about school, about the friends who had drifted away when he got sick, about how scared he had been waking up in the hospital 2 weeks ago. Julian listened, really listened, without checking his phone or thinking about anything else except his son's words. Dr. Richardson arrived around 11, a kind-faced man in his 50s with graying hair and a warm smile. He greeted Tyler first, then turned to Julian. Mr. Pierce, I'm glad you're here. We need to discuss Tyler's prognosis and treatment options. What followed was a detailed explanation of Tyler's condition, a rare form of leukemia that had been aggressive from the start. Dr. Richardson outlined the treatment plan. More chemotherapy, possible radiation, and eventually, if Tyler responded well, consideration for a bone marrow transplant. The next few months will be challenging, Dr. Richardson said honestly. Tyler will need intensive treatment and he'll need strong support. Family support is often as important as the medical intervention itself. He'll have it, Julian said immediately. Whatever he needs for as long as he needs it. I'll be here every step. Dr. Richardson smiled. That's good to hear, Mr. Pierce. Tyler's been something of a lone wolf since he arrived. It will help tremendously to have you present. After the doctor left, Tyler looked at his father. You really mean it, don't you? You're actually going to stay. I really mean it, Julian confirmed. Tyler, I can't change the past. I can't give you back the 3 years I wasted. But I can give you right now and tomorrow and every day after that. You're my son and you're my priority. Everything else is secondary. Tyler's eyes filled with tears, but he smiled through them. Okay, Dad. But just so you know, I'm going to hold you to that. Please do, Julian said, reaching over to squeeze Tyler's hand. Hold me accountable. That's what family does. The afternoon brought an unexpected visitor. Bria appeared in the doorway, having clearly escaped her mother's supervision. Hi, she said, waving at Tyler. I'm Bria. Your dad borrowed my mom yesterday. Are you the sick teenager she talks about sometimes? Tyler laughed, a sound that made Julian's heart soar. Yeah, I guess I am. I'm Tyler. I like your hair, Bria said, walking into the room uninvited. It's wavy. Mine is curly. Mama says we should celebrate all kinds of beautiful. Your mama sounds really smart, Tyler said, clearly charmed. She is, Bria agreed. She knows everything. Well, almost everything. She doesn't know how to play video games, but nobody's perfect. Julian watched in amazement as Bria chatted with Tyler about everything from her favorite cartoons to her goldfish bubbles to her upcoming school Christmas concert. Tyler engaged with her naturally, smiling and laughing in a way Julian had not seen in years. The child's uninhibited joy was infectious. Naomi appeared 15 minutes later, slightly out of breath. Bria Johnson, what did I tell you about wandering off? She looked apologetically at Julian and Tyler. I'm so sorry. She disappeared while I was updating patient charts. It's fine, Tyler said quickly. She's cool. Can she come back sometime? Naomi looked surprised. Are you sure? She can be a lot. I'm only a little bit a lot, Bria protested. Not very much a lot. Everyone laughed at that and Naomi shook her head with fond exasperation. We'll see. If Tyler feels up for visitors, maybe you can stop by again tomorrow. Yes, Bria fist pumped. I'm going to bring my coloring books. Do you like coloring, Tyler? You know, I used to, Tyler said. I'd like to try again. As Naomi ushered her daughter out, she paused at the door. Mr. Pierce, Julian, I got the call about my father. He's being transferred this afternoon. I still can't believe it's real. We've been struggling for so long and now suddenly there's hope. Real, actual hope. How long until you can see him? Julian asked. He'll be settled in at Central Memorial by evening, Naomi said. I have to finish my shift here, but I'm planning to drive over after work. That's 3 hours away, Julian said, frowning. And you've been working double shifts. You must be exhausted. I'll manage, Naomi said with a tired smile. I always do. An idea struck Julian, one that felt both impulsive and absolutely right. Let me drive you. Both of you. I have a driver, a comfortable car. You and Bria can rest on the way, and you won't have to worry about navigating while tired. Plus, I can make sure everything is set up properly at the hospital. Naomi hesitated, and Julian could see her instinct to refuse warring with practical reality. Julian, you've done so much already. I can't ask you to do more. You're not asking. I'm offering, Julian pointed out. And think about Bria. She'll be more comfortable in my car than dealing with a long train ride or bus trip. Please, Mama? Bria's voice drifted in from the hallway where she had been eavesdropping. I want to see Grandpa. And Mr. Julian's car is probably super fancy. Naomi laughed despite herself. That child. She looked at Julian, searching his face for any sign of obligation or pity, but finding only genuine desire to help. Okay. Yes. Thank you. We'd appreciate the ride. It's settled then, Julian said. What time do you finish your shift? 7, Naomi replied. But Julian, please don't feel like you have to wait here all day. I'm not going anywhere, Julian said, glancing at Tyler. I have everything I need right here. After Naomi and Bria left, Tyler spoke up. Dad, they're really nice. Naomi and her daughter. They are, Julian agreed. They're good people. Are you? Tyler paused, choosing his words carefully. Are you helping them because you feel guilty or because you actually want to? It was a perceptive question, one that showed how much Tyler had grown up in the years Julian had been absent. Both, Julian answered honestly. I do feel guilty about a lot of things, but that's not why I'm helping them. I'm helping because it's the right thing to do, because they showed me kindness when I was at my lowest, and because I finally understand what your mother tried to teach me for years. Money only matters when you use it to make a positive difference in people's lives. Tyler nodded slowly. Mom would really like them. She would have been friends with Naomi. They're both the kind of people who care about everyone. I think you're right, Julian said. And your mother would be proud that you noticed that. She'd be proud of the young man you're becoming. That evening, Julian kept his promise. At 7 o'clock, he met Naomi and Bria in the hospital lobby. His driver had brought the car around, a spacious black SUV that made Bria's eyes go wide. Whoa, the little girl breathed. This is like the cars in movies. The drive to Central Memorial was comfortable and quiet. Bria fell asleep within 30 minutes, curled up in the back seat with her head on her mother's lap. Naomi stroked her daughter's hair absently, staring out the window at the passing scenery. Penny for your thoughts? Julian asked from the seat beside her. Naomi smiled slightly. Just thinking about how much can change in 24 hours. Yesterday morning, I was working double shifts and rationing my father's medication because we couldn't afford his full prescription. Today, he's being transferred to one of the best cardiac centers in the country, and I'm riding in a car that costs more than I make in 5 years, driven by a man who was a complete stranger yesterday. Life is strange sometimes, Julian agreed. Full of unexpected turns. Is it always this easy for you? Naomi asked, not unkindly. Helping people, I mean. You just decide to do something and it happens. Julian considered this. The doing part is easy when you have resources. The deciding part, the seeing what needs to be done and caring enough to act on it, that's harder. I've spent years with the ability to help people but too focused on my own problems, my own empire building, to notice who needed help. Your daughter changed that in about 5 minutes. She has a gift, Naomi said softly, looking down at Bria's sleeping face. She sees people's hearts. Not their wallets or their titles or their problems. Just their hearts. I hope the world never makes her cynical. With you as her mother, I doubt it will, Julian said. They arrived at Central Memorial just before 10. The hospital was impressive, a state-of-the-art facility that spoke of cutting-edge medical care and substantial funding. Julian's team had worked quickly. By the time they arrived, Naomi's father, Robert Johnson, was already settled in a private room in the cardiac ward. Bria woke up as they entered the building, immediately alert. Is Grandpa here? Can I see him? A nurse directed them to the room, and Bria rushed ahead despite her mother's calls to slow down. By the time Julian and Naomi caught up, Bria had already climbed onto her grandfather's bed and was hugging him carefully. Robert Johnson was in his early 60s but looked older, worn down by illness and struggle. His dark skin had an ashen undertone, and he was connected to various monitors. But his eyes, when they met Naomi's, were bright with tears and love. My baby girl, he said, his voice weak but warm. They told me what happened. They told me about the transfer, the treatment plan, everything. I couldn't believe it. Naomi went to her father's other side, taking his hand gently. Dad, this is Julian Pierce. He's the one who made this possible. Robert's gaze shifted to Julian, who stood respectfully near the door, not wanting to intrude on the family moment. Mr. Pierce, I don't have words to thank you. You're saving my life. You're giving my daughter her father back and my granddaughter her grandpa. How can I ever repay such a gift? Julian stepped closer, genuinely moved by the man's emotion. Mr. Johnson, I don't want repayment. Your daughter and granddaughter showed me kindness when I desperately needed it. This is me paying that forward. Besides, Bria informed me yesterday that you tell the best stories. The world needs people who tell good stories. Robert laughed, which turned into a cough. After recovering, he smiled at Julian. She's right. I do tell the best stories. And Mr. Pierce, I promise you, when I'm out of this hospital, I'll tell you every story I know as payment. I'd like that, Julian said sincerely. But for now, focus on getting better. You have the best doctors, the best care. Let them do their work. They stayed for another hour, during which Julian learned that Robert had been a teacher for 35 years before his health forced him into early retirement. He had raised Naomi alone after his wife died when Naomi was just 10, working 2 jobs to put her through nursing school. Despite his illness, his love for his family radiated from every word and gesture. On the drive back, Bria once again fell asleep quickly, but this time Naomi stayed awake, looking at Julian with an expression he could not quite read. Why are you really doing all this? She asked quietly. And please don't say it's just about paying forward kindness. There has to be more. Julian thought about this, wanting to give her an honest answer. 3 years ago I lost my wife. Instead of grieving with my son, I ran away into work. I convinced myself I was being responsible, being strong, providing for Tyler's future. But the truth is I was just a coward. I couldn't handle the pain, so I avoided everything, including my son. And that avoidance almost cost me Tyler forever. He paused, gathering his thoughts. Yesterday, when I got that call about Tyler's condition getting worse, I realized I had wasted 3 years. 3 years I'll never get back. 3 years Tyler needed me and I wasn't there. And I was sitting on those hospital steps, completely broken, when your daughter walked up to me. Julian looked at Naomi directly. Bria didn't see a billionaire or a CEO or any of the things I've spent my life building. She just saw a person who was sad. And her solution was to offer the most precious thing she has, her mother. That kind of uncomplicated kindness, that immediate desire to help someone who's hurting, it reminded me of who I used to want to be. Who my wife always saw in me even when I didn't see it in myself. So yes, he continued, I'm helping because of kindness. But I'm also helping because you and your family represent something I lost sight of. The understanding that we're all connected, that we're supposed to take care of each other, that having resources means having responsibility. Your father shouldn't die because he can't afford treatment. Bria shouldn't grow up without her grandfather. And you shouldn't have to work yourself to death trying to save him. If I can fix that, why wouldn't I? Naomi was crying softly, tears streaming down her face in the dim light of the car. You're a good man, Julian Pierce. A better man than you give yourself credit for. I'm trying to be, Julian said. Your family is helping me remember how. When they arrived back at the city, Julian insisted on having his driver take Naomi and Bria all the way home, despite Naomi's protest that they could take the subway from the hospital. It's late, you're exhausted, and Bria is asleep, Julian pointed out reasonably. Let me do this one last small thing. Naomi finally agreed, too tired to argue. As the car pulled up to a modest apartment building in a working-class neighborhood, she turned to Julian. Will you really be here tomorrow? At the hospital with Tyler? Every day, Julian promised. I'm not going anywhere. Then maybe, if it's okay with you and Tyler, Bria and I could visit again. She really seemed to connect with your son. We'd like that, Julian said warmly. Tyler hasn't smiled that much in years. Your daughter is good medicine. Naomi gathered the sleeping Bria into her arms with practiced ease. Thank you, Julian. For everything. For my father, for your kindness, for reminding me that good people still exist. Thank you, Julian replied. For showing me that accepting help isn't weakness. And for having a daughter wise beyond her years who understands that sometimes people just need to borrow a mother. Naomi laughed through her tears. I'm never going to hear the end of that, am I? Probably not, Julian agreed with a smile. He watched until they were safely inside the building before instructing his driver to take him home. As they drove through the quiet city streets, Julian reflected on how dramatically his life had shifted in just 24 hours. He had gone from being a man who had everything but nothing that mattered to someone who was beginning to understand what actually had value. Tomorrow he would return to the hospital. He would sit with Tyler. Naomi and Bria would visit, and maybe some more of the walls between him and his son would come down. He would check on Robert's progress at Central Memorial. He would continue showing up, being present, being the person he should have been all along. But tonight, as Julian finally climbed into bed in his empty mansion, he did not feel the usual crushing loneliness. Instead, he felt something he had not experienced in years: purpose. Not the hollow purpose of closing another business deal or growing his wealth, but real purpose. The purpose that comes from helping others, from rebuilding relationships, from finally understanding that the measure of a life is not what you accumulate but what you give and who you love. He fell asleep thinking about a little girl in a green coat with red ribbons in her hair, telling a crying stranger he could borrow her mother. That one simple, pure act of compassion had become a catalyst for change that was rippling outward, touching multiple lives, creating connections that would transform everyone involved. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new moments of growth, new opportunities to be better. But Julian Pierce was ready. For the first time in 3 years, he was truly ready to live again. The morning sun poured through Tyler's hospital room window, catching dust motes in its bright beams. Julian sat in his now familiar chair, coffee in hand, having been there since 6 a.m. Tyler was still sleeping, his face peaceful in rest, free from the pain and fear that sometimes clouded it during waking hours. Julian had spent the past week establishing a routine: arrive early, spend the entire day with Tyler, leave only briefly to check on his businesses remotely in the evening, then return for a final good night. True to his word, he had not missed a single day. And slowly, carefully, Tyler was beginning to trust that maybe this time his father would not disappear. A soft knock interrupted Julian's thoughts. He looked up to see Bria's face peeking around the door frame, her eyes bright with mischief. "Is Tyler awake?" she whispered loudly, the kind of whisper children use that is almost louder than speaking. "Not yet," Julian whispered back with a smile. "But you can come in quietly and wait if you want." Bria tiptoed in with exaggerated care, followed by Naomi in her bright blue scrubs. "I told her to wait until later," Naomi said apologetically, but someone insisted on checking on her new friend before school. "I brought him something," Bria announced, pulling a piece of paper from her small backpack. "I drew a picture. Mama said when people are sick, pictures make them feel better." Julian examined the drawing: stick figures in bright colors, one lying in a bed, others standing around with big smiles. At the top, written in careful 7-year-old handwriting, "Get well, Tyler. From your friend Bria." "He's going to love this," Julian said sincerely. "You're a good friend, Bria." "I know," Bria said matter-of-factly, with no arrogance, just the simple confidence of a child stating truth. "Mama says friends show up. So I'm showing up." Naomi met Julian's eyes over her daughter's head, and they shared a smile. In many ways, Bria was teaching them all about the fundamentals of human connection. Show up, be kind, share what you have, love without conditions. Tyler stirred, his eyes fluttering open. He saw Bria first and immediately smiled. "Hey Bria. Is it coloring day?" "I can't stay," Bria said, bouncing on her toes. "School starts soon. But I brought you this." She held up her drawing proudly. Tyler took it carefully, studying it with genuine appreciation. "This is amazing. Can I keep it?" "That's why I made it," Bria explained patiently. "So you can look at it and remember you have friends." Something flickered across Tyler's face, an emotion Julian recognized: loneliness. Tyler's friends had visited once or twice in the first week but had gradually stopped coming. Teenage lives moved fast and illness made people uncomfortable. But here was Bria, 7 years old, faithfully appearing every morning before school. "Thank you, Bria," Tyler said, his voice thick. "This means a lot." After Naomi took Bria to school, Julian helped Tyler tape the drawing to the wall where he could see it from his bed. They had been adding to this wall all week: photos, cards, magazine cutouts. Creating a space that felt less like a hospital room and more like Tyler's own place. "She's a good kid," Tyler said, looking at the drawing. "I wish I had friends like that." "What about your school friends?" Julian asked carefully. "I haven't seen them lately." Tyler shrugged, trying to appear casual, but Julian could see the hurt. "They're busy. And I get it. Being around sick people is depressing. I probably wouldn't want to visit me either." "Tyler." "It's fine, Dad. Really. It's just how it is." Tyler changed the subject quickly. "What's on the agenda today? More boring TV, or can we do something different?" Julian had been thinking about this. Tyler was stable enough for some activities, and Dr. Richardson had mentioned that engagement and stimulation could help with mental health during treatment. An idea had been forming, one that might help both Tyler and others. "How would you feel about meeting some of the other kids on this floor?" Julian asked. "The ones who don't get many visitors?" Tyler looked surprised. "What do you mean?" "Naomi mentioned there are several long-term patients here, kids with chronic illnesses who are here for weeks or months. Some of them don't have much family support. I thought maybe you could visit them, talk to them. Share what you're going through." Tyler considered this, then nodded slowly. "Yeah, okay. That might actually be cool. I mean, I know what it's like to feel alone in here." Over the next few hours, with Naomi's help and Dr. Richardson's approval, Julian and Tyler visited 3 other young patients. First was a 12-year-old boy named Jordan with cystic fibrosis, who loved basketball and had posters of NBA players covering his walls. Tyler talked to him about his own love of sports and promised to bring some of his old jerseys on the next visit. Second was 16-year-old Ava, who had been in a car accident and was recovering from spinal injuries. She was sardonic and tough, clearly using humor as armor against fear. Tyler matched her energy, trading jokes and stories, and Julian watched his son come alive in a way he had not seen in weeks. Third was 9-year-old Sammy, a gentle boy with bone cancer who barely spoke but listened intently as Tyler talked about video games and movies. By the end of the visit, Sammy was smiling and had asked if Tyler could come back. "That was good," Tyler said as they returned to his room. "Weird to say, but it felt good to talk to them. To not be the only one dealing with this." "You helped them," Julian observed. "Just by showing up and being real with them." "Maybe we could do it again?" Tyler suggested. "Make it a regular thing?" Julian's heart swelled with pride. This was the son he remembered, the compassionate boy who had always cared about others. Cancer and abandonment had not destroyed that core kindness, just buried it under layers of pain and anger. It was emerging again, slowly but surely. "Absolutely," Julian agreed. "We'll make it as regular as you want." That afternoon brought unexpected news. Dr. Richardson entered with a mixture of concern and hope on his face. "Tyler, your latest test results came back. The chemo is working better than we initially hoped. Your numbers are improving." Tyler sat up straighter. "Really? I'm getting better?" "It's early days," Dr. Richardson cautioned, "but yes, you're responding well to treatment. If this continues, we might be able to discuss bone marrow transplant options sooner than anticipated." "What does that mean?" Tyler looked between the doctor and his father. "It means," Dr. Richardson explained, "that if we can find a match, a transplant could potentially cure you. It's a difficult process with risks, but for someone your age with your response to treatment, the success rate is encouraging." After the doctor left, Tyler turned to Julian, his eyes bright with something that looked like hope but also fear. "Dad, what if we can't find a match? What if no one's compatible?" "Then we'll cross that bridge when we come to it," Julian said firmly. "But Tyler, I'm getting tested immediately. And we'll test everyone else we can. We'll find a match." "What if you're not a match?" Tyler's voice cracked. "What if?" Julian moved to the bed, taking both of Tyler's hands in his. "Listen to me. No matter what happens with the transplant, you're not alone in this. We're going to fight this together with every resource, every doctor, every option available. And beyond that, beyond the medical stuff, I'm here. Every single day. That's not changing regardless of test results or compatibility or anything else." Tyler leaned into his father and Julian wrapped his arms around him, holding on tight. "I'm scared, Dad. I don't want to die. I'm only 16. "I know, son. I know." Julian's own voice broke. "But you're strong and you're fighting and you have so many people who care about you. We're going to get through this." They stayed like that for a long time, father and son, drawing strength from each other in a way they had not done since Rebecca died. That evening, as Julian sat in the hospital cafeteria grabbing a quick dinner, Naomi joined him with her own tray of food. "Mind if I sit?" she asked. "Please do," Julian said, grateful for the company. They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes before Naomi spoke. "I heard about Tyler's test results. That's wonderful news about his response to treatment." "It is," Julian agreed. "But now we have to find a bone marrow match, and there's no guarantee I'll be compatible." "Have you been tested yet?" "Tomorrow morning," Julian confirmed. "Dr. Richardson is expediting everything." Naomi nodded thoughtfully. "You know, if you're not a match, we could organize a donor drive. The hospital has programs for that. Test dozens, even hundreds of people. Increase the odds. Would you help me set that up if it comes to that?" Julian asked. Of course, Naomi said without hesitation. Tyler's a good kid. And you're doing everything right, Julian. Showing up, being present, supporting him. Rebecca would be proud. Julian looked up sharply. How do you know about Rebecca? Naomi smiled gently. Tyler talks about her sometimes. About how kind she was, how she always saw the best in people. He says you're starting to remind him of her. Julian had to clear his throat, emotion threatening to overwhelm him. That's the best compliment anyone could give me. They talked for another hour, Naomi sharing stories about her father's progress at Central Memorial, how he was already stronger with proper treatment and nutrition. Julian told her about Tyler's visits to the other young patients and his idea to make it a regular thing. That's beautiful, Naomi said. You're building community in a place where people often feel isolated. That's powerful, Julian. I'm learning from the best teachers, Julian said, gesturing to indicate Naomi and Bria. Your daughter has taught me more about compassion in 2 weeks than I learned in 42 years before meeting her. She's special, Naomi agreed with a mother's pride. But Julian, so are you. You're taking the lessons and acting on them. That's what matters. Their conversation was interrupted by a commotion near the cafeteria entrance. Julian looked up to see a man and woman, both looking exhausted and worried, speaking urgently to a hospital staff member. Lost their insurance, the staff member was saying. Without coverage, we can't proceed with the surgery. Julian's ears perked up and Naomi noticed. Don't even think about it, she said, reading his mind. Think about what? Julian asked innocently. You can't solve every problem in this hospital, Julian. You have to focus on Tyler. I can do both, Julian countered. He stood, approaching the distressed couple. Excuse me, I couldn't help overhearing. What surgery does your child need? The woman looked at him with red, swollen eyes. Our daughter has appendicitis. She needs emergency surgery, but our insurance lapsed because I lost my job last month. Without immediate payment, they can't schedule her until tomorrow at the earliest, and the doctor says she doesn't have that long. What's your daughter's name? Julian asked. Sophie. She's 8. Where is she now? In the emergency room in so much pain, the father said, his voice breaking. We're trying to figure out payment plans, loans, anything. Julian pulled out his phone, called the hospital's billing department directly. 5 minutes later it was arranged. Sophie's surgery is covered. They're prepping the OR now. Your daughter will be taken care of. The parents stared at him in shock. What? Who are you? We can't accept. You can and you will, Julian said firmly but kindly. Your daughter needs surgery. That's what matters. Go be with her. The financial details are handled. The mother burst into tears, hugging Julian despite being a complete stranger. Thank you. Oh God, thank you. I don't know who you are, but you just saved our baby. Just someone who can help and wants to, Julian said simply. Go be with Sophie. After they rushed off, Julian returned to Naomi, who was shaking her head but smiling. You're impossible. I prefer determined, Julian corrected with a grin. Julian, you can't pay for everyone's medical bills. Why not? Julian asked seriously. I have the money. They have the need. Why would I not help? Naomi had no answer for that because in truth, there was no good reason not to help when help was possible. Over the next week, word spread through the hospital about the mysterious benefactor helping families in crisis. Julian did not seek recognition, did not want publicity, but gradually more people approached him or asked nurses to identify the man who helps people. He set up a system. Families in genuine financial crisis were referred to his assistant, who would verify the situation and arrange payment. It was not charity for charity's sake but practical help for people facing impossible situations. Tyler watched his father's activities with growing pride. Dad, you're like a superhero but with a checkbook instead of superpowers. Money isn't a superpower, Julian corrected. Compassion is. The money is just a tool. Your mom understood that. I'm finally learning. Bria continued her daily visits, bringing drawings, stories, and unstoppable enthusiasm. She also began visiting Jordan, Ava, and Sammy, spreading her particular brand of joy to anyone who would accept it. The pediatric floor gradually became a more hopeful place, with Tyler and Bria at the center of an expanding circle of connection. One evening, as Julian sat with Tyler watching a movie, his son spoke up during a commercial break. Dad, I've been thinking. If you're not a match for the transplant, I want to do the donor drive. Make it public. Use your name to get people to sign up. Are you sure? Julian asked. That's a lot of attention. I'm sure, Tyler said firmly. If my situation can help build the donor database and potentially save other people too, why wouldn't we do that? Mom would have done it without hesitation. Julian smiled, pride overwhelming him. You're absolutely right. And yes, if I'm not a match, we'll do the biggest, most comprehensive donor drive this city has ever seen. Cool, Tyler said, settling back against his pillows. And Dad? Thanks for staying. For really staying this time. Thank you for giving me another chance, Julian replied, his throat tight with emotion. Well, Tyler said thoughtfully, you did have help from a 7-year-old who told you to borrow her mom. Pretty hard to ignore that kind of sign. They both laughed, and Julian reflected on how true that was. Bria's simple, innocent offer had been exactly the wake-up call he needed. And now, nearly 3 weeks later, his entire life had transformed. He was present, engaged, building relationships, helping others, and most importantly, rebuilding his bond with his son. The next morning, Julian got tested for bone marrow compatibility. The results would take a week to process. In the meantime, he continued his routine. Mornings with Tyler, afternoons helping other families, evenings checking in with Naomi about her father's progress. Robert Johnson was thriving under his new care plan. He had gained weight, his color had improved, and he was officially on the transplant list with a good prognosis. Naomi brought him to visit the hospital one afternoon, and Julian was struck by the difference in the man he had met just 2 weeks earlier. Mr. Pierce, Robert said, gripping Julian's hand firmly, I don't know how to thank you properly. You've given me my life back. You can thank me by being here for Naomi and Bria for many years to come, Julian said. That's all the thanks I need. I heard what you've been doing, Robert continued, helping other families here. That's real grace, son. That's what having money should look like. I'm learning, Julian admitted. Your granddaughter has been an excellent teacher. Bria has a gift, Robert agreed. Inherited it from her grandmother. My late wife had the same ability to see straight to people's hearts. Naomi got her strength, Bria got her insight. That night, Tyler's results came back from Dr. Richardson's latest round of tests. The chemo was continuing to work. Tyler's cancer was in remission. Not cured, not yet, but controlled. The transplant was now more important than ever because it represented the chance for a complete cure. This is good news, Dr. Richardson emphasized. Better than good. Tyler's body is responding beautifully to treatment. If we can find a compatible donor and proceed with the transplant in the next 2 to 3 months, his prognosis is excellent. What are the odds without a transplant? Tyler asked directly, his voice steady. Dr. Richardson did not sugarcoat it. The cancer could return. With a transplant, we're looking at an 85% long-term survival rate for someone your age with your response pattern. Without it, maybe 40%. The transplant is really the best path forward. After the doctor left, Tyler looked at Julian. So now we just need to find a match. Simple, right? One step at a time, Julian said. We'll know my results in a few days. And if I'm not compatible, we launch the donor drive immediately. Tyler, we're going to find you a match. Tyler nodded, then smiled slightly. You know what's weird? I'm not as scared as I thought I'd be. I mean, I'm still scared, but not like before. Having you here, having Bria and Naomi, even Jordan and Ava and Sammy, it's like I'm not fighting alone anymore. You're definitely not alone, Julian confirmed. You've got an entire community now. We're all in this together. And that was the truth. What had started with a crying billionaire on hospital steps and a 7-year-old's offer to loan out her mother had grown into something larger. A network of care and support, of people helping people, of connections that transcended money or status or circumstance. Julian realized that while he had been building businesses and accumulating wealth for decades, this right here, this web of human relationships and mutual support, was the real legacy worth leaving. Tyler was learning it too, through his visits with other patients and his growing friendship with Bria. That night, as Julian finally headed home, he stopped by the hospital chapel. He was not particularly religious, but something drew him in. The small room was empty, quiet, lit only by electric candles. He sat in a pew and simply thought. About Rebecca and how much he missed her. About Tyler and the second chance he had been granted. About Naomi and Bria and Robert and all the families he had helped over the past weeks. About how close he had come to missing all of this by staying locked in his self-imposed exile of work. I'm trying, Rebecca, he said quietly to the empty room. I'm trying to be the man you always believed I could be. I'm trying to be the father Tyler deserves. I'm sorry it took me so long to figure out what really matters. He sat there for another few minutes, finding unexpected peace in the silence. Then he stood, squared his shoulders, and headed home to rest for another day of showing up and being present. Because that was the thing about building bridges in broken places. It happened one plank at a time, one day at a time, one act of kindness at a time. And Julian Pierce was finally ready to put in the work. The pediatric floor of Metropolitan Children's Hospital buzzed with an energy that had nothing to do with medical urgency. It was December 25th, Christmas morning, and the entire ward had been transformed overnight into a winter wonderland that somehow managed to be festive without being overwhelming. Julian had orchestrated all of it, but not alone. With Naomi's guidance, Tyler's input, and Bria's enthusiastic suggestions, they had turned the normally sterile floor into something magical. Real pine garlands adorned the hallways, filling the air with that distinctive Christmas scent. Soft white lights twinkled along every surface. A massive tree stood in the common room, decorated with ornaments that the young patients had made themselves over the past week. But the real gift, the one Julian had spent the last 3 days coordinating, was something else entirely. "Dad, are you sure about this?" Tyler asked from his wheelchair, looking around at the preparations. He had been too weak to walk much lately, but his spirits remained high. "This is a lot." "I'm completely sure," Julian said, adjusting the bright red sweater he wore. Tyler wore green. Naomi had insisted they needed to match the holiday theme, and Julian found he did not mind. A month ago he would have scoffed at wearing anything so casual. Now it felt perfectly right. Bria appeared around the corner, wearing a red dress with white fur trim, looking like a tiny, enthusiastic Christmas elf. "Is it time? Can we start?" "Please say we can start." Naomi followed her daughter, laughing. "Bria, you need to be patient. We're waiting for everyone to gather." "But I've been patient for hours," Bria protested. "I woke up at 5. "It's 7:30 now," Naomi pointed out. "That's only 2.5 hours of patience." "Exactly," Bria said with perfect 7-year-old logic. "Hours? Multiple hours. That's very patient." Julian grinned at the exchange, then addressed the group. "Okay, let's start gathering families. Tyler, you and Bria can begin visiting rooms and inviting people to the common area." Over the next 30 minutes, the common room filled with patients and their families. Children in hospital gowns or wheelchairs, parents who looked exhausted but hopeful, siblings who had been living in hospital waiting rooms. Jordan, Ava, and Sammy, the 3 patients Tyler had befriended, sat near the front, curious about what was happening. When everyone was assembled, Julian stood next to the Christmas tree, suddenly nervous. He had given presentations to thousands of people, pitched to hostile boardrooms, negotiated billion-dollar deals. But speaking to this group felt more important and more vulnerable than any of that. "Thank you all for coming," Julian began, his voice carrying across the room. "I know hospitals are not where anyone wants to spend Christmas, and I know many of you are dealing with situations that feel impossible." People nodded, expressions understanding. "A month ago," Julian continued, "I was sitting on the steps outside this hospital, completely broken. My son Tyler was sick, our relationship was shattered, and I felt like I had lost everything that mattered. Then a 7-year-old girl named Bria walked up to me and told me I could borrow her mom because I looked sad." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Bria waved proudly, not at all embarrassed by the attention. "That simple act of kindness changed my life," Julian said. "It reminded me that we're supposed to help each other, that community matters more than money, and that showing up for people is the most important thing any of us can do." He paused, looking around at all the faces watching him. "So today, on Christmas, I want to give back some of what this community has given me. Every family in this room, every patient in this ward, every person who's struggling with medical bills or treatment costs or just the overwhelming fear of having a sick child, I'm covering it. All of it." Stunned silence filled the room. "Medical bills, surgical costs, prescription expenses, physical therapy, whatever you need," Julian clarified. "It's handled. You should be focusing on healing and being together, not on how to pay for care." The silence broke into gasps, tears, and questions. Parents looked at each other in disbelief. One mother in the back row started crying openly. "Is this real?" someone called out. "Completely real," Julian confirmed. "My team has been working with the hospital billing department all week. Every family here will receive documentation today confirming that your financial obligations to this hospital are resolved." A man stood up, holding his young daughter who had a port in her chest for chemotherapy. "Why would you do this? You don't even know us." "Because I can," Julian said simply. "And because when you have the ability to help, you should. It's that simple." The room erupted. People crying, hugging, thanking him, thanking each other. Julian felt Tyler's hand slip into his, squeezing tight. He looked down to see his son smiling up at him, tears streaming down his face. "Mom would be so proud of you, Dad," Tyler whispered. Julian had to swallow hard past the lump in his throat. "I'm trying to make her proud. Trying to make you proud too." But the gift-giving was not done. For the next 2 hours, Julian, Naomi, Tyler, and Bria distributed presents to every child in the ward. Not generic gifts, but personalized ones, chosen based on interests Naomi had compiled from her interactions with the patients. Jordan got a signed basketball and team jersey. Ava received art supplies and a tablet with drawing software. Sammy got a collection of his favorite books and a stuffed animal that looked like a dragon. Bria took her role as gift distributor very seriously, carefully reading each name tag and hand-delivering presents with personalized encouragement. "This is for you and you're very brave," she would say. Or, "Mama says you're doing great and I think so too." The hospital staff provided Christmas breakfast, and families gathered to eat together, share stories, and simply enjoy a moment of normalcy in an environment that often felt anything but normal. Julian sat with Tyler, Naomi, and Bria watching the happiness around them. "You did a good thing," Naomi said quietly to Julian. "A really good thing." "We did a good thing," Julian corrected. "You helped plan all of this. And your daughter was the catalyst." "Our daughter inspired it," Naomi agreed, smiling at Bria who was currently explaining something very earnestly to Sammy, "but you acted on that inspiration. That's what counts." Later that afternoon, as the festivities wound down and children returned to their rooms for rest, Tyler had another visitor. Dr. Richardson entered Tyler's room with an unusual expression, cautious optimism mixed with excitement. "I have your father's test results," Dr. Richardson said without preamble. "Julian, you're a match. Not a perfect match but close enough. We can proceed with the transplant." Julian felt his knees go weak. He sat down heavily, hardly daring to believe it. "Are you sure? How close is close enough?" 8 out of 10 markers match, Dr. Richardson explained. "It's not a perfect 10 out of 10, but it's well within the acceptable range for a successful transplant. In fact, with you being Tyler's father, the biological relationship actually increases the success odds." Tyler stared at his father, then at the doctor, then back to his father. "So you can save me? My own dad can save me?" "We can try," Dr. Richardson cautioned, ever the careful physician. "There are still risks and recovery will be difficult. But yes, Tyler, your father can donate bone marrow to you, and our chances of putting your cancer into permanent remission are very good." Father and son looked at each other, and without words, Julian moved to Tyler's bed, wrapping his arms around his son as carefully as possible given all the medical equipment. They held each other, both crying, both grateful beyond words. "Thank you," Tyler whispered. "Thank you for being here. Thank you for changing. Thank you for being my match." "I would do anything for you," Julian said, his voice breaking. "Anything at all. You're my son, Tyler. My whole world." When they finally pulled apart, Dr. Richardson continued with practical details. "We'll schedule the extraction procedure for early January, give you both a chance to celebrate the holidays and build strength. The actual transplant will follow about a week later. Julian, you'll need some minor preparation but nothing too extensive. The extraction is done under general anesthesia, so you won't feel anything and recovery is usually just a few days of soreness." "Whatever needs to happen," Julian said immediately. "Just tell me when and where." After Dr. Richardson left with promises to send detailed information, Tyler looked at his father seriously. "Dad, are you scared? About the procedure?" "A little," Julian admitted. "But Tyler, even if I was terrified, I'd still do it in a heartbeat. There's nothing I wouldn't do to give you a chance at a healthy life." "You know what's crazy?" Tyler said thoughtfully. "A month ago, if you'd told me you'd be here, that you'd be my donor, that we'd be close again, I would have said you were lying. I had given up on you ever being my real dad again." "I'm so sorry." Tyler held up a hand. "Let me finish. I would have been wrong to give up. You proved that. You showed up, every single day exactly like you promised. You changed, Dad. You really changed. And now you're literally going to save my life. That's..." Tyler wiped at his eyes. "That's more than I ever hoped for." "You saved my life too," Julian said. "By giving me another chance. By letting me back in." They spent the rest of Christmas Day together, joined periodically by Naomi and Bria. Bria was fascinated by the transplant news, asking endless questions about how bone marrow worked, whether it hurt, and if Tyler would become part Julian after the procedure. "He's already part of me," Julian explained. He's my son. This just gives him some of my healthy bone marrow to help his body fight the cancer. So you're sharing yourself to save him, Bria summarized. Like sharing toys but with body parts. Everyone laughed at that simplification, but Bria was not entirely wrong. That was essentially what organ donation was, sharing parts of yourself to help another person live. That evening, Naomi's father Robert arrived, having gotten special permission to leave Central Memorial for Christmas evening. He looked healthier than ever, his color good, his energy much improved. His own transplant evaluation was going well, and doctors were optimistic about finding him a heart donor. Mr. Pierce, Robert greeted Julian warmly, I hear you've been making Christmas miracles happen all over this hospital. Just trying to spread some of the goodness your family brought into my life, Julian replied. They gathered in Tyler's room, the space filled beyond capacity with extra chairs, but no one minded. Bria sat on her grandfather's lap, Tyler was propped up in bed surrounded by pillows, Naomi perched on the windowsill, and Julian stood near Tyler, one hand resting on his son's shoulder. This is what Christmas should be, Robert said, looking around at the assembled group. Not just family by blood but family by choice. People who show up for each other. Amen to that, Naomi agreed. I want to propose a toast, Julian said, picking up his cup of apple juice. Everyone else grabbed whatever beverage they had. To second chances. To showing up. To the people who see us at our worst and help us become our best. And especially to little girls in green coats who offer to loan out their mothers to crying strangers. To Bria, everyone chorused, raising their cups. And to borrowed moms, Bria added, making everyone laugh. They spent the next 2 hours talking, laughing, and sharing stories. Robert told tales from his teaching days, making everyone laugh with his animated impressions of various students. Tyler talked about his plans for after the transplant, all the things he wanted to do when he was healthy. Naomi shared memories of Christmases past with her small family. Julian mostly listened, soaking in the warmth and connection. This was what he had been missing for years. Not just the presence of his son, but the sense of belonging to something larger than himself. Community. Real human connection. Love that was not transactional or conditional. As the evening drew to a close and everyone prepared to leave, Bria approached Julian with a serious expression. Mr. Julian, can I ask you something? Of course, Bria. Anything. Are you still sad? Like you were that night I found you? Julian knelt down to her level, looking directly into her wise brown eyes. No, sweetheart. I'm not sad anymore. You know why? Bria shook her head. Because you and your mom taught me how to be happy again. You showed me what really matters. And now I have my son back and friends like your family and I get to help people. I'm not sad at all. I'm grateful. Bria considered this, then nodded, satisfied. Good. Because you have a much better smile than a sad face. You should smile more. I'll remember that, Julian promised, ruffling her hair gently. After everyone had left and Tyler had fallen asleep, exhausted from the emotional day, Julian sat in his chair and reflected on the past month. Christmas Day had brought the news he had been hoping for. He could save his son. But beyond that, it had demonstrated something even more important, the ripple effect of kindness. One act of compassion from a 7-year-old had transformed multiple lives. It had brought Julian back to his son. It had given Naomi's father access to life-saving treatment. It had helped dozens of families in the hospital escape crushing medical debt. And it had created a community of people supporting each other through impossible circumstances. Julian pulled out his phone and sent an email to his executive team at Pierce Industries. The leave of absence he had taken was becoming permanent in a different way. He was not abandoning his company, but he was restructuring his involvement. More delegation, less micromanagement. Trusting his excellent team to handle day-to-day operations while he focused on what actually mattered, family and making a genuine positive impact. He also drafted plans for a foundation, something he had been thinking about for weeks. The Pierce Family Foundation, dedicated to helping families facing medical crises. Not just paying bills but providing comprehensive support, transportation, temporary housing for out-of-town families, counseling services, and meal programs. Everything he had seen families struggle with during his time at the hospital. Naomi had agreed to help him design the programs, drawing on her years of experience seeing what families actually needed. It would launch officially in the spring, but the groundwork could begin now. Julian looked at Tyler sleeping peacefully, his chest rising and falling steadily. In a month they would be preparing for the transplant. It would be difficult, possibly dangerous, certainly painful. But they would face it together. Father and son, united by blood and finally by genuine connection. "Merry Christmas, Tyler," Julian whispered. "Thank you for giving me a second chance. I promise I won't waste it." Outside, snow began to fall again, blanketing the city in white. Inside Metropolitan Children's Hospital, children slept with new toys beside their beds, parents rested easier knowing their bills were paid, and one man who had been broken on the steps just a month ago now sat whole, grateful, and ready for whatever challenges tomorrow might bring. Because that was the thing about second chances. They were gifts, precious and rare, not to be taken lightly. And Julian Pierce would spend the rest of his life proving he was worthy of the one he had been given. The best gift he had received this Christmas was not wrapped under a tree. It was the trust of his son, the friendship of a remarkable family, and the knowledge that it was never too late to change, to grow, to become the person you were always meant to be. Merry Christmas indeed. January arrived with bitter cold and clear skies. Julian had spent New Year's Eve in Tyler's hospital room, watching the ball drop on TV while sharing sparkling cider and making quiet wishes for the year ahead. Tyler's wish, to be healthy enough to return to school. Julian's wish, to be the father Tyler deserved every single day of that year and beyond. Now, 2 weeks into the new year, Julian found himself in an unusual situation, learning how to do ordinary things. Not negotiate contracts or analyze market trends or make strategic business decisions, but truly ordinary tasks that most people handled without thought. "You don't know how to crack an egg?" Tyler asked, incredulous, from his perch on a kitchen stool in Naomi's small apartment. He was having a good week, strong enough to spend a few hours outside the hospital under Dr. Richardson's supervision. "I know the theory of cracking an egg," Julian defended himself, holding the egg gingerly. "I've just never personally done it." Naomi laughed from where she was chopping vegetables. "Julian, you're a billionaire who's never cracked an egg. That feels very on brand for your previous life." "Hey, I'm trying to learn my new life," Julian protested, gently tapping the egg against the bowl. It exploded in his hand, shell and contents dripping everywhere. That was not supposed to happen. Bria giggled from where she was coloring at the kitchen table. "You're supposed to tap it softer, Mr. Julian. Here, watch." She hopped down, grabbed another egg and demonstrated with the confidence of a child who had done this 100 times. "See? Gentle tap, fingers in the crack, pull apart. Easy." Julian tried again with Bria's guidance, and this time succeeded in getting mostly egg and minimal shell into the bowl. "I did it. You did it." Bria cheered, high-fiving him. This had become their Saturday routine over the past 3 weeks. Julian would pick up Tyler from the hospital if he was well enough, and they would spend the day with Naomi and Bria. Sometimes they went to museums or parks. Other times, like today, they simply existed together in the orderly chaos of Naomi's home, cooking meals and doing mundane tasks that felt revolutionary to Julian. It was teaching him something profound. Life was not about the extraordinary moments. It was about the accumulation of ordinary ones. Cracking eggs for breakfast, watching a child color at a table, chopping vegetables while talking about nothing in particular. These were the moments that built a life worth living. "Okay, so once you've cracked all the eggs," Naomi instructed, "you whisk them like this." She demonstrated a quick wrist motion. "See? Not too hard." Julian tried to copy her motion and ended up splashing egg mixture onto the counter. "Why is cooking so complicated?" "It's not," Tyler said, barely suppressing laughter. "You're just overthinking it. You approach eggs like they're a hostile business negotiation." "Everything I know is business negotiation," Julian admitted. "Well, unlearn that," Naomi said firmly but kindly. "You can't negotiate with eggs. You just have to accept them for what they are and work with them." Julian thought about that, recognizing the wisdom in it. He had spent decades trying to control everything, to negotiate his way through every situation. But you could not negotiate with cancer or grief or lost time. You could only accept reality and adapt. Work with what was not what you wished it to be. The eggs eventually became scrambled eggs, slightly overcooked but edible. They ate breakfast together around Naomi's small kitchen table, and Julian felt more content than any five-star restaurant had ever made him feel. "Dad," Tyler said between bites, "I've been thinking about the transplant. What if something goes wrong?" Julian set down his fork, giving Tyler his full attention. "Dr. Richardson says the odds are very good. 85% success rate for someone your age with your response to treatment. But that's 15% where something bad happens," Tyler pointed out. Before Julian could respond, Naomi spoke up gently. "Tyler, honey, I'm not going to lie to you. Medical procedures carry risks. But here's what I know from 8 years of working in that hospital. Outcomes depend a lot on mindset. Patients who go into treatment believing they can make it, who have strong support systems, they statistically do better. So I should just think positive and hope for the best? Tyler asked, his tone slightly sarcastic. No, Naomi said. You should acknowledge that you're scared, which is completely valid. Then you should remember that you're strong, you've fought hard, and you have people who love you. Fear is normal. But don't let it be the only thing you feel. Tyler absorbed this, then looked at his father. Are you scared? About your part of it? Honestly? Julian said. A little. But Tyler, even if I was terrified, I'd still do it. There's no decision to make here. You need this and I can give it. That's all there is to it. What if you regret it? Tyler pressed. What if you're in pain and you wish you hadn't? Tyler, stop, Julian interrupted gently but firmly. Listen to me very carefully. There is nothing, absolutely nothing, I wouldn't endure to give you a chance at life. A few days of discomfort is nothing compared to getting you healthy. This isn't even a sacrifice. It's a privilege. Tyler's eyes filled with tears, but he smiled. Okay. Thanks, Dad. Bria, who had been listening intently while finishing her eggs, spoke up. My mama says love means doing hard things for people. Like when I had to get shots and mama held my hand even though it made her sad to see me cry. She did the hard thing because she loves me. That's exactly right, Bria, Julian said. Love means showing up even when it's hard. The conversation moved on to lighter topics, but Julian noticed Tyler seemed more settled, less anxious. Sometimes the best thing you could do for someone was simply be honest about your own commitment to them. After breakfast, Bria decided everyone needed to learn a dance she had learned at school. What followed was perhaps the most absurd and joyful 30 minutes of Julian's adult life. A billionaire CEO, a teenage cancer patient, a nurse, and a 7-year-old girl dancing awkwardly in a small living room to pop music playing from a phone. Tyler laughed so hard he had to sit down, clutching his sides. Dad, you have no rhythm. Like none at all. I'm aware, Julian gasped, equally breathless from laughter and exertion. Business school did not include dance lessons. Maybe it should have, Naomi teased, demonstrating a spin that looked effortless. Show off, Julian said, attempting the same spin and nearly tripping over his own feet. They collapsed onto the couch together, Tyler leaning against Julian, both of them watching as Bria continued to dance with unstoppable energy. This is nice, Tyler said quietly. Just being normal for a while. It is, Julian agreed, wrapping an arm around his son's shoulders. We should do this more often. Normal. Boring. Ordinary. Those words used to sound terrible to me, Tyler admitted. When I was younger, I wanted everything to be exciting and special. Now I realize ordinary is pretty great. Julian kissed the top of Tyler's head, emotion washing over him. His son had been forced to grow up too fast, to face mortality at 16, to learn lessons about what mattered that most people did not learn until they were much older, if ever. Later that afternoon, when Tyler needed to rest, Julian found himself having coffee with Naomi while Bria napped on the couch and Tyler dozed in Bria's room. You're doing really well, Naomi said, cradling her mug. With Tyler, with learning to be present. I'm impressed. I still feel like I'm figuring it out as I go, Julian admitted. Every day is a new lesson in how much I don't know about just being human. That's good though, Naomi said. Recognizing what you don't know. That's the first step to learning. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment before Julian spoke again. Can I ask you something personal? Sure, Naomi said. Bria's father. Where is he? Naomi's expression clouded slightly. He left when Bria was 2. Decided parenthood was not what he wanted, moved across the country, no contact since. I tried to reach him when my dad got sick, thinking maybe he'd help with Bria while I dealt with everything, but he never responded. I'm sorry, Julian said. His loss. It really is, Naomi agreed. Bria is incredible and he's missing all of it. But honestly, Julian, I've made my peace with it. Yes, it's hard being a single parent. Yes, I wish Bria had a father who showed up for her. But we have my dad and we have each other and we're figuring it out. You're doing an amazing job, Julian said sincerely. Bria is one of the most well-adjusted, compassionate kids I've ever met. Thank you, Naomi said, her voice warm. That means a lot. Julian hesitated, then decided to voice something he had been thinking about for weeks. Naomi, I know I've already helped with your father's treatment, but I want to do more. Let me set up a college fund for Bria. And a trust to ensure you're financially secure. You work so hard and... Julian, stop, Naomi interrupted, but not unkindly. I appreciate the thought, I really do. And yes, you've helped my family more than I can ever repay. But I need you to understand something. I don't want to be your charity project. Julian started to protest, but Naomi held up a hand. Let me finish, she said. You've helped my father, which I accepted because he was dying and you gave us hope. That was a gift I'm eternally grateful for. But Bria and I were okay. I have a good job. We have what we need. I'm proud of the life I've built for us, and I don't want money to change that or to feel like we owe you something. Julian nodded slowly, understanding. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to imply you couldn't handle things. I care about you and Bria. Both of you have become important to Tyler and me. I want to help if I can. Naomi's expression softened. And that impulse comes from a good place, I know it does. But Julian, the best thing you can give us is not money. It's your presence. Your friendship. The way you show up for Tyler, that's what matters. Bria talks about you constantly. You're becoming like family to her, to us. That's worth more than any trust fund. Family, Julian repeated, testing the word. Is that what we're becoming? Isn't it? Naomi asked. We've spent almost every day together for 6 weeks. Our kids are best friends. We cook meals together. We celebrate holidays together. We support each other through hard times. If that's not family, what is? Julian felt something shift in his chest, a warmth that had nothing to do with the coffee. She was right. They had become family, not through blood but through choice and presence and care. Okay, he said. No trust funds or college funds unless you explicitly ask for them. But the friendship, the presence, the showing up, that I'll keep doing. Deal? Naomi agreed, extending her hand. They shook on it, then both laughed at the formality of it. The afternoon wore on in comfortable domesticity. When Tyler and Bria woke from their naps, they decided to watch a movie. All 4 of them crowded onto Naomi's couch with blankets and popcorn. Halfway through, Bria fell asleep again, this time with her head on Julian's lap. Tyler dozed against Naomi's shoulder. Julian caught Naomi's eye over the sleeping children and saw his own contentment reflected there. This was what life was supposed to be. Not constant excitement or achievement or the next big thing, but moments like this. Safe, warm, connected. Later, when Julian and Tyler were preparing to leave, Bria woke up long enough to hug them both goodbye. Will you come back next Saturday? She asked Julian. If your mom says it's okay, Julian confirmed. It's okay, Naomi said immediately. Then yes, we'll be here, Julian promised. In the car on the way back to the hospital, Tyler was quiet, looking out the window at the city lights. What are you thinking about? Julian asked. Just how different things are now, Tyler said. 6 weeks ago I hated you. Now I can't imagine life without you. It's weird how fast things can change. Change can be good, Julian said. When you're changing in the right direction. Do you think? Tyler hesitated. Do you think Mom would be happy? With how things are now? Julian considered carefully before answering. I think your mother would be proud of both of us. Of you for being brave enough to give me another chance. Of me for finally waking up and being present. And I think she'd love Naomi and Bria just like we do. Yeah, Tyler agreed. She would have really liked them. Especially Bria. Mom always said kids should be allowed to be kids, to stay innocent and kind as long as possible. Bria is all of that. Your mother was very wise, Julian said. I wish I had listened to her more when she was here. You're listening now, Tyler pointed out. To her memory, I mean. You're becoming the person she saw in you. Julian had to blink back tears. I'm trying, Tyler. Every day I'm trying. They drove in comfortable silence the rest of the way. When they arrived at the hospital, Julian helped Tyler back to his room and got him settled for the night. Dad, Tyler said as Julian was preparing to leave, thanks for today. For the normal stuff. The eggs and dancing and movies. That's the kind of thing I missed these past 3 years. We'll do it again next week, Julian promised. And every week after. Normal Saturdays. Just us and the Johnsons being a weird little found family. I like that, Tyler said, smiling. Found family. That's a good name for what we are. Julian kissed Tyler's forehead. Get some rest. I'll see you in the morning. As Julian left the hospital and headed home to his empty mansion, he reflected on what Naomi had said about family. She was absolutely right. Family was not just about biology or legal documents. It was about showing up, caring, being present through good times and bad. The Pierce family had expanded in the most unexpected way. A grieving father and son. A single mother and her daughter. A grandfather fighting for his life. They had come together through circumstance and choice, forming bonds that felt as strong as any blood relation. Julian had spent his whole life building an empire, accumulating wealth, achieving success as the world measured it. But he was only now learning what it meant to build a life. And the key he was discovering was simple. Show up, be vulnerable, accept help, give help, and cherish the ordinary moments that accumulate into extraordinary relationships. He fell asleep that night not in his usual king-sized bed but on the couch in his library, still wearing his jeans and t-shirt from the day, too content and tired to bother with his usual nighttime routine. And for the first time in 3 years he slept peacefully, without nightmares, without regrets, just grateful for the life he was finally learning how to live. Learning to be human again, it turned out, was not about grand gestures or dramatic transformations. It was about cracking eggs and dancing badly and falling asleep during movies with people you loved. It was simple, ordinary, and absolutely perfect. The day Julian had been both anticipating and dreading arrived on a Tuesday in late January, the day Tyler wanted to really talk about everything that had happened since Rebecca died. Dr. Richardson had suggested this might happen as the transplant date approached, explaining that many patients needed to process old emotions before facing major medical procedures. It started simply enough. Julian arrived at Tyler's room at his usual time to find his son sitting up in bed, looking determined and nervous at the same time. "Dad, can we talk? Like really talk?" Tyler asked before Julian even had a chance to sit down. Julian felt his stomach tighten but forced himself to appear calm. "Of course. About anything. What's on your mind?" Tyler took a deep breath. "I need to tell you how the last 3 years felt. From my side. And it might be hard to hear." "Okay," Julian said, sitting down in his chair and giving Tyler his complete attention. "I'm listening. And Tyler, you can say anything you need to say. I won't get defensive. I promise." Another breath, then Tyler began. "When Mom died, I felt like I lost both parents. She was gone, which was horrible and terrifying and the worst thing that ever happened to me. But you disappeared too. You were physically there sometimes, but you were never really present. You were already thinking about work, checking your phone, planning your next meeting." Julian nodded, his throat tight, but he stayed silent, letting Tyler speak. "I needed you so badly," Tyler continued, his voice cracking. "I was 13 years old and my mother had just died, and I needed my father to hold me and tell me we'd be okay. But instead you hired more staff to take care of me. You made sure I had everything I needed materially, but you never asked what I actually needed, which was you." Tears were streaming down Tyler's face now, but he kept going. "I had so many bad days. Days when I couldn't get out of bed because I missed Mom so much. Days when I wanted to talk about her and remember her. But you avoided anything that mentioned her. You acted like talking about Mom would somehow make it hurt more, when really, not talking about her made it feel like she never existed." "Tyler," Julian started, but his son shook his head. "Please let me finish. I need to say all of this." "Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead." Tyler wiped his eyes but continued. "The worst part was that I started to think you didn't care. Not that you were grieving too, which I understand now, but that you literally didn't care about me. You missed my 8th grade graduation. You forgot my 14th birthday until your assistant reminded you 3 days later. You promised to come to my basketball games and then canceled at the last minute over and over." Each example was a knife to Julian's heart, but he forced himself to listen without interrupting, without making excuses. "And then I got sick," Tyler said, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. "And for the first 2 weeks you barely visited. I was in the hospital, terrified I might die, and you were still choosing work over me. I genuinely thought I didn't matter to you anymore. That maybe I had never really mattered and Mom was the one who made you care about having a family." Julian was crying now too, unable to hold back the tears. "Tyler, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." "I know you are," Tyler said. "And I can see you've changed. I can see you're here now, every day really present. But I needed to tell you how it felt those 3 years. I needed you to understand how much it hurt to be abandoned by the only parent I had left." "You have every right to feel that way," Julian managed to say. "Because that's exactly what I did. I abandoned you when you needed me most. And there's no excuse for that, Tyler. None at all." They sat in heavy silence for a moment, the weight of 3 years of pain hanging in the air between them. Then Julian spoke, his voice raw with emotion. "Can I tell you my side? Not as an excuse because there is no excuse, but just so you understand what was happening in my head." Tyler nodded, wiping his face with the sleeve of his hospital gown. Julian took a moment to gather his thoughts, trying to find the right words to explain the inexplicable. "When your mother died, something broke in me. Completely shattered. She was my anchor, my compass, the person who made me want to be better. And suddenly she was gone, and I didn't know how to exist without her. He paused, remembering those dark early days. I should have turned to you. We should have grieved together. But Tyler, when I looked at you, all I could see was her. You have her eyes, her smile, her way of tilting your head when you're thinking. Being around you was like being constantly reminded of what I'd lost, and I couldn't handle it. So you avoided me, Tyler said quietly. I did, Julian admitted. And that was unforgivably selfish. You needed your father, and I was too broken to be there for you. So I buried myself in work because work was simple. Work had clear problems and solutions. Work didn't require me to feel anything. Julian leaned forward, looking directly into his son's eyes. But here's what I need you to know. Every single day of those 3 years, even when I was being the worst father imaginable, I loved you. I never stopped loving you. I was just so lost in my own grief and pain that I couldn't show it. I couldn't be what you needed. Why didn't you just tell me that? Tyler asked. Why didn't you say, Tyler, I'm struggling, I'm grieving, I need help? I would have understood. Because I'm a prideful idiot who thought showing weakness was unacceptable, Julian said bluntly. I spent my whole life being the strong one, the one in control, the one who handled everything. Admitting I was broken felt like admitting I had failed. Not just as a husband who couldn't save his wife, but as a father who couldn't hold his family together. Tyler absorbed this, then asked the question Julian had been dreading. Did you ever think about me during those 3 years? Like really think about me? Every day, Julian answered immediately. Every single day. I'd be in meetings and suddenly think, Tyler has a basketball game tonight, or, Tyler mentioned he needed help with math homework. And then I'd make excuses for why I couldn't be there, why work was more important, why my assistant could handle it. But I was thinking about you constantly. Then why, Tyler's voice broke, why was it so easy for you to stay away? Julian felt his heart crack further. Because staying away was easier than facing what I'd become. Every time I did show up, I could see the hurt in your eyes, the disappointment. And it made me feel like such a failure that I'd tell myself you were better off without me around. That you didn't need a father who was this broken. That's stupid, Tyler said, but without malice. Of course I needed you. Broken or not, you're my dad. You're the only parent I have left. You're absolutely right, Julian agreed. It was stupid and selfish and wrong. And Tyler, I can't give you back those 3 years. I can't undo the birthdays I missed or the games I didn't attend or the nights you cried yourself to sleep because you felt alone. All I can do is promise you that I will spend the rest of my life being the father you deserve. They were both crying again, but this time it felt different. Not just grief and anger, but also release. The walls that had been built between them were finally coming down, brick by painful brick. I want to believe you, Tyler said. I do believe you mostly. But I'm also scared that once I'm better, once the crisis is over, you'll go back to how you were. That you'll decide work is important again and I'll lose you all over again. Julian stood and moved to sit on the edge of Tyler's bed, taking both of his son's hands. Tyler, look at me. I'm not going back to how I was. That person doesn't exist anymore. Bria and Naomi didn't just save me that night on the hospital steps. They woke me up to who I'd become and who I needed to be. You're not a crisis I'm responding to. You're my son and you're my priority. Always. Promise? Tyler asked, his voice small and young. I promise, Julian said. And if I ever start slipping, if I ever start prioritizing work over you again, I want you to call me on it. Immediately. Hold me accountable, Tyler. That's what family does. Tyler nodded, then surprised Julian by asking, Can you hug me? Like really hug me? Yes, Julian said, carefully gathering Tyler into his arms, mindful of the 4 lines and monitors. They held each other for a long time, both crying, both healing. When they finally separated, Tyler smiled through his tears. That felt good. We should do that more often. Whenever you want, Julian promised. I'm a hugger now. Totally committed to hugging. Tyler laughed, a genuine laugh that made Julian's heart soar. Dad, you're being weird. I'm being present, Julian corrected. There's a difference. They spent the rest of the morning talking more easily than they had in years. Tyler told Julian about the friends who had drifted away and how much that had hurt. Julian told Tyler about his plans for the foundation and asked for Tyler's input on how to make it most helpful for other families facing similar situations. I think you should include counseling, Tyler suggested. Like family counseling. Because so many families probably handle crisis the way we did, pulling apart instead of together. If you could provide therapy as part of your help, that might prevent other kids from feeling as alone as I did. That's brilliant, Julian said, already making notes on his phone. We'll absolutely include that. Around lunchtime, Bria and Naomi arrived for their daily visit. Bria took one look at Tyler and Julian's red, puffy eyes and announced, "You've been having feelings. Mama says feelings are important but also tiring." "Your mama is very wise," Tyler said, holding out his arms for a hug, which Bria immediately provided. "Did you have good feelings or sad feelings?" Bria asked seriously. "Both," Tyler admitted. "We talked about some sad stuff, but it was good to talk about it." Bria nodded as if this made perfect sense. "Sometimes you have to talk about the sad to make room for the happy. That's what Grandpa says." "How is your grandpa?" Julian asked Naomi. "Great actually," Naomi said, her face lighting up. "His evaluation went really well. He's officially on the active transplant list now. Could get a heart within a few months if the right match comes up." "That's wonderful," Julian said sincerely. They spent the afternoon together, the four of them, with Naomi checking Tyler's vitals periodically in her professional capacity but mostly just being present as a friend and chosen family member. Bria taught Tyler a complicated hand-clapping game she had learned at school, which he picked up surprisingly quickly. "You're good at this," Bria observed. "Much better than Mr. Julian was at cracking eggs." Everyone laughed, and Julian held up his hands in surrender. "I've accepted my limitations with cooking. But I'm excellent at hand-clapping games, thank you very much." "Prove it," Bria challenged, and Julian found himself engaged in an intense hand-clapping competition with a 7-year-old while Tyler and Naomi cheered from the sidelines. Later, when Bria had tired herself out and was napping in the corner chair, Tyler spoke quietly to Naomi. "Thanks for being here. For both of us. You and Bria have been really important to me and my dad." "Your family now," Naomi said simply. "This is what family does." "That's the second time today someone's called us family," Julian observed. "I like it." "Found family," Tyler added. "That's what we decided to call it, remember Dad?" "The best kind of family," Naomi agreed. "Chosen, not obligated." That evening, after Naomi and Bria had left and Tyler was settling in for the night, Julian's phone rang. It was his assistant with a situation at Pierce Industries that apparently required his immediate attention. Julian listened to the explanation, recognized it as genuinely important, and then said something he would never have said 3 months ago. "Handle it. You have my full authority to make whatever decisions are necessary. I trust your judgment." "But Mr. Pierce." "I'm with my son," Julian interrupted firmly. "Nothing is more important than that. You've got this." After ending the call, he looked up to find Tyler watching him with an expression of surprise and pride. "You really meant it," Tyler said. "About work being secondary." "I really meant it," Julian confirmed. "You come first, Tyler. Always." Tyler smiled, the kind of smile that reached his eyes and lit up his whole face. "Okay, Dad. I believe you now. Really believe you." Those words, that trust, meant more to Julian than any business success ever had. They represented something earned through consistent presence, through vulnerability, through the hard work of actually showing up day after day after day. As Julian settled into his chair for another night at the hospital, he reflected on how different this conversation could have gone if it had happened 3 months ago. 3 months ago, he would have been defensive, made excuses, possibly even gotten angry at Tyler for not understanding how hard he had worked. But he was different now. He had learned to listen without defending, to acknowledge pain without minimizing it, to accept responsibility without making excuses. And in doing so, he had finally broken through the walls that had separated him from his son. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The transplant was scheduled for next week. There would be pain, risk, and uncertainty. But they would face it together as a team with walls down and hearts open. "Hey, Dad." Tyler's voice interrupted his thoughts. "Yeah, son? I love you. I know I haven't said that in a while, but I do. I love you." Julian's throat tightened with emotion. "I love you too, Tyler. More than anything in the world." "I know," Tyler said, yawning. "Now I know." As Tyler drifted off to sleep, Julian sat in the quiet room, feeling more at peace than he could ever remember. The walls had come down. The truth had been spoken. The pain had been acknowledged. And somehow, through all of that difficulty, they had found their way back to each other. Healing, Julian realized, was not about avoiding pain or pretending everything was fine. It was about facing the hurt head-on, speaking the truth, and trusting that love was strong enough to survive honesty. He and Tyler had done that today. They had torn down the walls between them and rebuilt their relationship on a foundation of truth, vulnerability, and genuine connection. And that foundation would hold. Julian was certain of it. Because it was built not on perfection or pretense, but on the solid ground of showing up, being honest, and loving each other through everything. The man who had been too proud to admit weakness had learned to be vulnerable. The boy who had felt abandoned had learned to trust again. Together they were becoming a real family, one painful, honest conversation at a time. And tomorrow they would wake up and do it all again. Because that was what family did. They showed up, they told the truth, and they loved each other. Always. The morning of Tyler's transplant dawned gray and cold, fitting for a day that felt heavy with possibility and terror in equal measure. Julian had been awake since 4 a.m., having given up any pretense of sleep around 3. His own bone marrow extraction had been scheduled for later in the week, but Tyler's body was ready now. The doctors had decided, and they wanted to proceed. Tyler was in pre-op, being prepped for the procedure that would hopefully save his life. Julian sat in the waiting room trying not to think about all the things that could go wrong, when Naomi and Bria arrived with Robert in tow. "You shouldn't be here," Julian said to Robert, standing quickly. "You need to rest, preserve your strength for your own procedure." "Nonsense," Robert said firmly, though he did lean heavily on his cane. "Tyler is family. Family shows up." Bria immediately climbed into Julian's lap, wrapping her small arms around his neck. "Don't be scared, Mr. Julian. Mama says Tyler is strong and the doctors are good and we just have to believe." "Your mama is right," Julian said, holding Bria close and drawing comfort from her uncomplicated confidence. Naomi sat beside him, taking his hand. "How are you holding up?" "Terrified," Julian admitted. "I just got him back. I can't lose him now. I can't." "You won't," Naomi said with quiet certainty. "Tyler's fighter. Look at everything he's already survived." They sat together, this found family, waiting through the longest hours of Julian's life. The procedure itself would take several hours, Dr. Richardson had explained. First, they would extract Julian's bone marrow using specialized equipment. Then Tyler would receive high-dose chemotherapy to completely destroy his existing bone marrow. Finally, in what seemed like too simple a process for something so critical, they would transfuse Julian's healthy bone marrow into Tyler through and for like a blood transfusion. The bone marrow would then travel through Tyler's bloodstream to his bones, where it would hopefully settle in and begin producing healthy blood cells. The whole process was simultaneously miraculous and terrifying. Time moved strangely. Minutes felt like hours. Julian found himself praying, something he had not done since Rebecca's funeral. "Please," he thought, "please let this work. Please don't take him from me. Not now. Not when we're finally okay." Around 2 p.m. Dr. Richardson emerged, still in his surgical scrubs. Julian leaped to his feet, his heart pounding so hard he thought it might explode. "The procedure went well," Dr. Richardson said immediately, and Julian felt his knees buckle with relief. Naomi caught his arm, steadying him. "We successfully extracted the bone marrow from you, Julian, and the transfusion into Tyler is complete. He's in recovery now." "So he's okay?" Julian managed to ask. "He's stable," Dr. Richardson said carefully. "But Julian, I need you to understand what comes next. The transplant was successful, but now Tyler's body has to accept the new bone marrow. That process is called engraftment, and it typically takes 2 to 4 weeks. During that time, Tyler will be extremely vulnerable to infection because he essentially has no immune system." "What does that mean practically?" Naomi asked, her nurse's instinct for details kicking in. "It means Tyler will be in isolation," Dr. Richardson explained. "Very strict protocols. Masks, gowns, hand sanitizing for anyone who enters his room. No flowers, no outside food, minimal visitors. And we'll be monitoring him constantly for any signs of complications." "What kind of complications?" Julian felt dread pooling in his stomach again. "Infection is the primary concern," Dr. Richardson said. "But also graft versus host disease, where the new immune cells attack Tyler's body. We have medications to prevent it, but it's always a risk with transplants." "Can I see him?" Julian asked. "He's still unconscious from the anesthesia, but yes, you can sit with him. Just follow the isolation protocols." Dr. Richardson gave Julian's shoulder a squeeze. "You did a good thing today, Julian. You gave your son a real chance. Now we wait and hope and take excellent care of him." After Dr. Richardson left, Julian turned to his assembled family. "Thank you for being here. All of you. Where else would we be?" Robert said simply. Julian followed a nurse to Tyler's new room in the isolation ward, going through the process of gowning up, putting on a mask and sanitizing his hands thoroughly. When he finally entered the room, what he saw made his breath catch. Tyler looked so small in the hospital bed, surrounded by machines and monitors, and 4 running into his arm delivering the bone marrow that Julian's body had just provided. His son's face was pale, peaceful in drug-induced sleep, unaware of the battle his body was about to fight. Julian sat down in the chair beside the bed, carefully taking Tyler's hand. "Hey son, the hard part is over. You did great. Now you just have to rest and let the new bone marrow do its job. I'll be right here the whole time." He stayed there for hours, holding Tyler's hand, watching the monitors, praying silently. Naomi checked in periodically, bringing him food he could not eat and coffee he drank mechanically. Bria peeked through the window, waving and making faces to try to make Julian smile. Tyler woke up around dinner time, groggy and confused. "Dad." "I'm here," Julian said immediately. "Right here. How do you feel?" "Weird," Tyler mumbled. "Tired. Everything hurts." "That's normal," Julian assured him, though his heart ached hearing his son in pain. "The doctor said you did great. Now you just have to rest." "Did it work?" Tyler asked, his eyes struggling to focus. "The transplant." "Too early to know for sure," Julian answered honestly, remembering their agreement to always tell the truth. "But so far, everything went exactly as planned. The bone marrow is in you now. Your body just needs time to accept it." "How long?" Tyler asked. "A few weeks before we'll really know. But Tyler, you've got this. You've been so strong through everything else. This is just one more challenge." Tyler's eyes drifted closed again, the pain medication pulling him back under. Julian sat back in his chair, prepared for a long night. The days that followed established a new routine. Julian practically lived in Tyler's isolation room, leaving only when absolutely necessary. He worked remotely when Tyler was sleeping, taking conference calls in a mask and gown, making decisions about Pierce Industries from a hospital chair. Tyler's condition remained stable but precarious. His blood counts were dropping as expected, the chemotherapy having destroyed his old bone marrow, and they were waiting anxiously for signs that the new marrow was engrafting and producing healthy cells. On day 5 something changed. Tyler spiked a fever. Julian was dozing in his chair when the monitors started beeping, alerting the nursing staff. Within minutes, the room was full of people, Dr. Richardson ordering tests and adjusting medications. "What's happening?" Julian asked, feeling panic rise in his throat. "Fever could be many things," Dr. Richardson said, already examining Tyler. "Infection is the main concern, but it could also just be his body's reaction to the transplant. We're running blood cultures now to see if there's bacterial or fungal growth." Tyler was barely conscious, his skin burning hot to the touch. Julian wanted to gather him up, hold him, make it better through sheer force of will. But all he could do was stand there, helpless, while the medical team worked. The next 72 hours were the worst of Julian's life, surpassing even the days after Rebecca died. Tyler's fever remained high despite aggressive antibiotics. His blood pressure dropped, requiring medication to support it. He drifted in and out of consciousness, sometimes lucid, sometimes delirious. During one of his lucid moments, Tyler looked at Julian with fear in his eyes. "Dad, I'm scared. What if this doesn't work?" "It's going to work," Julian said with more confidence than he felt. "You're fighting, the doctors are fighting, and I'm right here fighting with you. We're not giving up." "But if something happens," Tyler's voice broke. "Nothing is going to happen," Julian said firmly. "Do you hear me, Tyler? You're going to get through this. We have too many plans. Normal Saturdays with Naomi and Bria, teaching you to cook more than just scrambled eggs, going to your graduation, watching you go to college. You have too much life ahead of you." "Dad." "No," Julian said, his voice fierce now. "I'm not losing you. Not after everything we've been through. Not after finding our way back to each other. You're going to fight this, Tyler. And you're going to win." Tyler managed a weak smile. "Okay, Dad. I'll try." "Not try," Julian corrected. "Do. You're going to do this." Naomi stayed close during those dark days, checking Tyler's charts, consulting with the doctors, providing Julian with medical explanations he could understand. She found him in the chapel on the 3rd night of Tyler's fever, sitting in the same spot he had occupied weeks earlier. "Julian," she said softly, sitting beside him. "I can't do this," Julian admitted, his voice breaking. "I can't watch him suffer. I can't lose him, Naomi. I just can't." "You're not going to lose him," Naomi said, taking his hand. "You don't know that," Julian said desperately. "The doctor said his body might be rejecting the transplant. Or it could be an infection they can't identify. Or—" "Julian, listen to me," Naomi interrupted. "I've been a nurse for 8 years. I've seen a lot of transplant patients. Tyler's numbers are actually improving, slowly but steadily. The fever is scary, yes, but his white blood cell count started to rise yesterday. That means the bone marrow is engrafting. His body is accepting the transplant. Julian looked at her with desperate hope. Really? You're not just saying that. Really? Naomi confirmed. I wouldn't lie to you about this. Tyler is fighting and he's winning. The fever will break. You just have to hold on a little longer. Julian leaned against her, too exhausted to maintain his composure. I don't know what I'd do without you. You and Bria, you've kept me sane through all of this. That's what family does, Naomi said, echoing her frequent reminder. We hold each other up when one of us can't stand alone. Naomi was right. On the fourth day after Tyler's fever started, it finally broke. Julian woke to find Tyler's forehead cool to the touch, his breathing even, his monitors showing normal readings. The blood cultures came back negative for infection, confirming that the fever had been Tyler's body's response to the transplant, not a dangerous complication. He's turned a corner, Dr. Richardson said with visible relief during morning rounds. His counts are rising faster than expected. The engraftment is taking hold. This is very good news, Julian. Julian could have collapsed with relief. So he's going to be okay? We're not out of the woods yet, Dr. Richardson cautioned. But yes, all signs point to a successful transplant. If his counts continue to rise and he remains infection-free for another week, we can start talking about moving him out of isolation. Julian immediately went to Tyler's bedside, taking his son's hand. Tyler was still sleeping, but his color was better, his breathing more relaxed. You did it, Julian whispered. You fought and you won. I'm so proud of you, Tyler. When Tyler woke an hour later, the first thing he said was, I feel better. Less like I'm dying. Julian laughed, the sound coming out half sob. Good. Because I have a lot of Saturdays planned for us and you need to be alive for them. Tyler smiled weakly. Deal. No dying. Got it. Over the next week, Tyler's recovery accelerated. His blood counts continued to rise, indicating that the new bone marrow was successfully producing healthy cells. His energy improved. He started eating solid food again. The isolation protocols remained in place, but the atmosphere in the room shifted from crisis to cautious optimism. Bria visited daily, pressing her face against the window to make funny faces at Tyler until he laughed. Naomi provided updates on Robert's condition, which was also improving. The family, scattered across different rooms and floors of various hospitals, was slowly healing together. On the 10th day post-transplant, Dr. Richardson brought extraordinary news. Tyler's latest tests show that the transplant has fully engrafted. His immune system is starting to rebuild. The cancer markers in his blood are undetectable. Tyler, you're in remission. Tyler stared at the doctor, then at Julian, hardly daring to believe it. Remission? Like actually in remission. Actually in remission, Dr. Richardson confirmed with a broad smile. We'll need to monitor you closely, of course. There's always a risk of relapse, and you'll need to be careful about infections while your immune system strengthens. But yes, Tyler, you're cancer-free. Julian could not speak. He just pulled Tyler into the most careful, gentle hug, both of them crying, both of them laughing, both of them hardly believing that they had made it through. We did it, Dad, Tyler said. We actually did it. You did it, Julian corrected. You're the fighter. I just provided raw materials. We did it together, Tyler insisted. As a team. Later that day, when Naomi and Bria were allowed a brief visit with full protective gear, Bria announced, I knew Tyler would be okay. I told everyone. Mama didn't believe me at first, but I knew. I always believed, Naomi protested. I was just being professionally cautious. You were scared, Bria said with childlike directness. But it's okay. Everybody was scared. Scary things make people scared. That's normal. Your daughter is absurdly wise, Julian told Naomi. I know, Naomi said proudly. Takes after her grandfather. They celebrated quietly in Tyler's room with juice boxes instead of champagne and hospital pudding instead of cake, but it felt more meaningful than any elaborate party could have been. They had fought for this moment, suffered for it, believed in it even when it seemed impossible. That night, after everyone had left and Tyler was sleeping peacefully, Julian sat in his chair and finally allowed himself to feel the full weight of what had just happened. He had come so close to losing everything. Tyler could have died. The transplant could have failed. The infection could have been untreatable. But none of those things had happened. Against the odds, through excellent medical care, through sheer stubborn will, through community support and love, Tyler had made it. They had made it. Julian thought about the man he had been 4 months ago, broken and crying on hospital steps, convinced he had lost everything. That man could never have imagined this moment. Could never have conceived of the family he would find, the healing that would happen, the joy that would emerge from so much pain. But here he was. Here they all were. A found family brought together by a 7-year-old simple offer and bound together by their decision to show up for each other through everything. The fear of losing what he had just found had nearly paralyzed Julian during Tyler's crisis. But now, on the other side of that fear, he understood something crucial. Love was always a risk. Being vulnerable meant the possibility of being hurt. Opening your heart guaranteed you could lose what you loved. But the alternative, shutting yourself off and refusing to connect, was not protection. It was just a different kind of loss. A slower, sadder way of dying. Julian had chosen to love, to show up, to be present despite the risk. And yes, he had experienced terror like nothing else when Tyler's life hung in the balance. But he had also experienced joy, connection, purpose, and meaning in ways he never had before. Love was worth the risk. Family was worth the fear. And Tyler, sleeping peacefully in his hospital bed, cancer-free and healing, was worth everything. Julian fell asleep in his chair, more at peace than he had been in years, dreaming of all the normal Saturdays to come, all the scrambled eggs Tyler would teach him to cook better, all the movies they would watch, all the ordinary moments that would accumulate into an extraordinary life. The fear had been real. The danger had been genuine. But they had survived it together as a family, and that made all the difference. 3 months after Tyler's successful transplant, spring was blooming across the city. Tyler had been released from the hospital 6 weeks earlier and was steadily regaining strength. His hair was growing back, softer and clearer than before. His energy returned gradually, and under Dr. Richardson's supervision, he was slowly reintegrating into normal teenage life. Julian sat in his home office, reviewing documents for the official launch of the Pierce Family Foundation. The foundation had grown beyond even his ambitious initial plans. With Naomi's input, they had developed comprehensive programs: medical bill assistance, family counseling, temporary housing for out-of-town families, meal delivery services, transportation support, and even emergency financial assistance for families who lost income while caring for sick children. A knock interrupted his concentration. Julian looked up to see Tyler standing in the doorway, looking healthier and happier than he had in over a year. "Hey Dad, can we talk?" "Always," Julian said, closing his laptop and giving Tyler his full attention. "What's up?" Tyler sat down across from him, fidgeting slightly with his phone. "I've been thinking about something. About the foundation launch next month." "Okay," Julian said. "What about it?" "I want to speak," Tyler said. "At the event. I want to tell my story, talk about what we went through, thank the people who helped us. I think it might inspire people, show them why the foundation matters." Julian felt pride swell in his chest. "Tyler, that's a wonderful idea. Are you sure you're ready for that kind of public attention?" "I'm sure," Tyler said firmly. "Dad, we have a platform. You're famous, the company is well known, and people are interested in our story. If we can use that to help other families, why wouldn't we? Your mother would be so proud of you," Julian said, his voice thick with emotion. "I hope so," Tyler replied. "I've been thinking about her a lot lately. About what she would want us to do with everything we've been given." They spent the next hour planning Tyler's speech, discussing what to share and what to keep private, how to balance vulnerability with maintaining appropriate boundaries. It was a collaborative process, and Julian marveled at Tyler's maturity and thoughtfulness. Later that afternoon, Julian had a previously scheduled meeting with Naomi at a cafe downtown. They had been coordinating frequently on foundation details, but this meeting felt different. Julian found himself more nervous than usual, though he could not quite articulate why. Naomi arrived wearing a bright blue dress that matched her scrubs in color but was decidedly more elegant. Julian stood to greet her, suddenly very aware that this was the first time he had seen her in anything other than scrubs or casual clothes. "You look beautiful," he said without thinking, then immediately felt his face heat up. Naomi smiled, a slight blush coloring her cheeks. "Thank you. I thought since we were meeting somewhere fancy instead of the hospital cafeteria, I should dress accordingly." They ordered coffee and began discussing foundation logistics, but Julian found himself distracted. Somewhere over the past 4 months, Naomi had become more than just a friend or colleague. She was the person he most wanted to talk to at the end of every day. The one whose opinion mattered most on important decisions. The one whose smile could lift his spirits even in the darkest moments. He was in love with her. The realization hit him with startling clarity in the middle of her explanation about grant application processes. "Julian, are you listening?" Naomi asked, looking at him with a mixture of amusement and concern. "Sorry," Julian said, shaking his head. "I was just thinking about something." "About what?" Naomi asked. Julian took a breath, deciding to be honest. "About how much you mean to me. To both Tyler and me." Naomi's expression softened. "You both mean a lot to me too. And to Bria and my father." Julian started, then stopped. This was not the time or place. He needed to think about this carefully, do this right. "Never mind. Let's get back to the foundation plans." Naomi looked at him curiously but did not push. They spent another hour working through details before parting ways. Over the next 2 weeks, Julian thought constantly about his feelings for Naomi. He wanted to tell her, to explore whether she felt the same way, but he was terrified of ruining the friendship and family dynamic they had built. What if she did not feel the same? What if it made things awkward? What if it somehow affected Tyler and Bria's friendship? The decision was essentially made for him when Robert had a medical emergency. Julian got the call from Naomi at 3 in the morning. "Julian, I'm sorry to wake you, but my dad is in emergency surgery. His heart, there were complications." "I'm on my way," Julian said immediately, not even thinking about it. "Which hospital?" "Central Memorial." "But Julian, you don't have to." "I'm already getting dressed," Julian interrupted. "I'll be there in 30 minutes. He arrived at the hospital to find Naomi in the waiting room, still in her pajamas with a coat thrown over them, her hair disheveled, her face streaked with tears. Bria was asleep on a nearby chair, covered with Naomi's jacket. Julian went straight to Naomi, pulling her into his arms. She collapsed against him, sobbing quietly. "I thought we had more time," she whispered. "The doctors said he was stable, that he could wait for a transplant donor. But tonight his heart it's failing, Julian. They're trying to stabilize him, but..." "Shoo," Julian soothed, holding her close. "He's strong. He's going to make it through this." They sat together for hours, Naomi leaning against Julian, drawing strength from his presence. When Bria woke up, confused and scared, Julian held her too, explaining in simple terms that Grandpa was sick and the doctors were helping him. Around 7 a.m. the surgeon emerged. Robert had made it through the emergency procedure, but his prognosis had changed. "He needs a heart transplant immediately," the surgeon explained. "He's too unstable to wait any longer. We're putting him at the top of the priority list, but there's no guarantee a heart will become available in time," Naomi finished, her voice hollow. "We'll do everything we can," the surgeon assured them before leaving. Julian made a decision. "I'm activating every resource I have. Every hospital network, every organ donation organization, every contact I've accumulated over 40 years in business. We're going to find Robert a heart." "Julian, organ donation doesn't work that way," Naomi said gently. "You can't just buy a heart. It has to be a match and someone has to die. You can't control that." "No, but I can make sure that when a match becomes available, we know about it immediately and the logistics are seamless. I can fund research into mechanical heart alternatives. I can ensure Robert has the absolute best care while we wait." Julian took Naomi's hands. "Let me help, Naomi. Please." Naomi looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. "Okay. Yes. Do whatever you can." Over the next week, Julian mobilized an extraordinary effort. He met with organ donor organizations, funded public awareness campaigns about the importance of donor registration, and ensured Robert's case was flagged with every transplant center in the region. He even began funding research into artificial heart technology, though he knew that would not help Robert in the immediate term. Tyler wanted to help too. "Dad, let's do a public appeal. Use social media, the news, whatever platform we have. Maybe someone will register as an organ donor because of it, and that could save Grandpa Robert and other people too." Together, father and son recorded a video about Robert's situation, about the critical need for organ donors, about how one person's decision to register could save multiple lives. They posted it online and it went viral within days. Thousands of people registered as organ donors in response. "Even if this doesn't save Dad directly," Naomi said, watching the registration numbers climb, "you're saving other people. Other families won't have to go through what we're going through." On day 9 of Robert's crisis, a miracle happened. A matching heart became available. A young man in another state had tragically died in an accident, but his family had made the generous decision to donate his organs. Robert was the best match for his heart. The transplant surgery was scheduled for the next morning. The whole found family gathered at Central Memorial, everyone nervous but hopeful. Bria drew pictures for her grandfather to look at when he woke up. Tyler, still regaining his own strength, was determined to be there anyway. Julian held Naomi's hand through the entire procedure. The surgery took 8 hours. When the cardiac surgeon finally emerged, the look on her face told them everything before she even spoke. The transplant was successful. Robert has a new heart and it's beating strong and healthy in his chest. Naomi broke down completely, and Julian held her while she cried tears of joy and relief and gratitude. Bria cheered, not fully understanding but knowing it was good news. Tyler grinned, looking happier than Julian had seen him in months. "Can we see him?" Naomi asked when she had regained some composure. "He's in recovery now, still unconscious," the surgeon said. "But yes, family can visit briefly once he's moved to the ICU." 2 hours later they were allowed in to see Robert. He looked peaceful, his color already better than it had been in months, machines monitoring his new heart's steady rhythm. "Dad," Naomi whispered, taking his hand carefully. "You did it. You have a new heart. You're going to be okay." Julian watched Naomi with her father, saw the love and relief on her face, and knew with absolute certainty what he needed to do. Life was too short, too precarious, too precious to waste time being cautious with the people you loved. That evening, after Robert had been moved to a regular room and was resting comfortably, after Tyler and Bria had gone home with Naomi's neighbor who had offered to help, Julian asked Naomi to take a walk with him in the hospital gardens. "Naomi," he began, then stopped, suddenly nervous in a way he had not been since he was a teenager. "Yes," Naomi prompted, looking at him curiously. "These past 4 months have changed my life," Julian said. "You and Bria and your father, you've taught me what actually matters. You've shown me how to be present, how to love, how to build a family that's chosen rather than just inherited." Naomi smiled. "You've done the same for us, Julian. You've given my father his life back. You've provided security I never dreamed we'd have. You've been an amazing friend." "That's the thing," Julian said, taking her hand. "I don't want to just be your friend, Naomi. I'm in love with you. I think I have been for months, but I was scared to say anything. Scared of ruining what we have." Naomi's eyes widened, filling with tears. "Julian." "Wait, let me finish," Julian interrupted gently. "I know this is complicated. We have kids to think about, a foundation to run, a whole dynamic we've built. And if you don't feel the same way, I'll accept that. But I had to tell you because watching your father almost die tonight reminded me that we don't have unlimited time. We need to say the important things while we can." Naomi was crying now but smiling through her tears. "Julian Pierce, are you really this oblivious?" "What?" Julian asked, confused. "I've been in love with you for 2 months, Naomi said, laughing and crying at the same time. "I thought you didn't feel the same way. I thought you just saw me as a friend and colleague." Julian stared at her, hardly believing what he was hearing. "You love me?" "Yes, you ridiculous man," Naomi said. "I love you. I love how you show up for Tyler every single day. I love how you play hand-clapping games with my daughter. I love how you held me tonight when I was falling apart. I love who you've become and who you're still becoming." Julian pulled her close, kissing her gently, then more deeply when she kissed him back. When they finally separated, both were smiling. "So what now?" Naomi asked. "Now," Julian said, "I have a proposal to make. Actually, 2 proposals." "2?" Naomi asked, laughing. "Overachiever. First," Julian said, suddenly serious, "I want you to be the director of the Pierce Family Foundation. Not just an advisor but the actual director. You understand what families need because you've lived it. You have the compassion and the organizational skills. I can't imagine anyone better for the job." Naomi's breath caught. "Julian, that's a huge position. Are you sure?" "Completely sure," Julian confirmed. "I trust you completely, Naomi. And it's paid, of course. A proper salary with full benefits. You'd be able to cut back your hospital shifts to part-time or even quit if you wanted. Spend more time with Bria and your father." Naomi wiped her eyes. "Yes, I accept. Thank you, Julian." "Good," Julian said, grinning. "Because I already had the contracts drawn up. I was just waiting for you to say yes." Naomi laughed. "And the second proposal?" Julian took both her hands, looking directly into her eyes. "Move in with me. You, Bria, and your father when he's recovered enough. My house is absurdly large and mostly empty. There's more than enough room for everyone. We're already functioning as a family. Let's make it official." Live together, raise our kids together, figure out this life together. Julian, Naomi said, her voice shaking, are you asking me to marry you? Not yet, Julian said honestly. I want to, but I think we should take this one step at a time. Move in together first. Let the kids adjust. Make sure this works in the day-to-day reality of living together. But Naomi, I do want a future with you. A real future. Marriage, growing old together, all of it. I'm just suggesting we build up to that. Naomi nodded slowly, thinking. What about the kids? Tyler and Bria? How will they feel about this? Why don't we ask them? Julian suggested. The next morning, they gathered Tyler and Bria in Robert's hospital room. Robert was awake now, weak but alert, and immediately noticed something different about Julian and Naomi. Well, Robert said with a knowing smile. You two finally figured it out, did you? Figured what out? Bria asked, looking between the adults. Julian and Naomi exchanged glances, then Julian spoke. Bria, Tyler, we wanted to talk to you both about something important. Your mom and I have feelings for each other. We care about each other as more than just friends. You love each other, Tyler said simply. We know, Dad. We've known for weeks. You have? Naomi asked, surprised. You're not subtle, Tyler said with amusement. The way you look at each other, how you always find excuses to touch each other, how happy you both are when you're together. Bria and I talked about it. We think it's nice, Bria added. Mama is happy. Mr. Julian is happy. Tyler is happy. I'm happy. Everyone is happy. So you'd be okay if we moved in together? Julian asked. All of us in one house like a real family? Bria's face lit up. Like a real family? With Tyler as my brother? Like a brother, Naomi clarified. Not technically your brother, but... Close enough, Tyler interrupted. I've always wanted a little sister. Especially one as cool as Bria. Bria launched herself at Tyler, hugging him fiercely. I have a brother. I have a brother. Robert laughed from his hospital bed, though it came out weak. Looks like you have your answer. There's one more thing, Julian said. Naomi has agreed to be the director of the Pierce Family Foundation. So she'll be working with me more closely, helping families going through what we went through. That's perfect, Tyler said. Mom would love that. Using your resources to actually help people. She would, Julian agreed, feeling Rebecca's presence in the room, approving of the path his life had taken. They spent the rest of the day planning, dreaming, imagining their future together. Robert would need months of recovery, but once he was stable, he would move into one of the guest suites in Julian's mansion, with full-time nursing care if needed. Bria would have her own room, decorated however she wanted. Tyler and Bria could choose to share the media room or the game room or whatever space they wanted for hanging out together. It's going to be chaos, Naomi said, smiling. 5 people, different schedules, learning to live together. Beautiful chaos, Julian corrected. The best kind. That evening as Julian and Tyler drove home, Tyler spoke up. Dad, I'm proud of you. For what? Julian asked. For being brave enough to try again, Tyler said. With love, with family, with all of it. You could have stayed closed off after Mom died. But you opened yourself up again. That takes courage. Julian felt emotion well up in his throat. I learned that from you, Tyler. You were brave enough to give me another chance. That taught me everything. They drove in comfortable silence for a while before Tyler spoke again. You know, if you do end up marrying Naomi eventually, I think it would be okay. I think Mom would want you to be happy. And Naomi makes you happy. She does, Julian agreed. But Tyler, no one will ever replace your mother. What I had with her was unique and special. What I'm building with Naomi is different, but equally important. There's room in my heart for both. I know, Tyler said. That's not what I was worried about. I was more worried about you being alone forever, actually. Julian reached over and squeezed Tyler's shoulder. Not alone anymore. We have a family now. A weird, wonderful, found family. The best kind, Tyler echoed his father's earlier words. As they pulled into the driveway of the house that would soon be full of life and love and beautiful chaos, Julian reflected on how much had changed since that December night 4 months ago. He had been broken, alone, and convinced he had lost everything. But a 7-year-old girl had told him he could borrow her mother. And that simple act of kindness had set in motion a series of events that had saved multiple lives, built a community, created a foundation that would help thousands of families, and brought together a family that chose each other every single day. Love, Julian had learned, was not something you found and kept safely locked away. It was something you lived, every day, through showing up and being present and having the courage to be vulnerable even when it was terrifying. 2 unexpected proposals had been made and accepted. More would come in time. But for now, Julian was content to take things one step at a time, building a life with Naomi and their children, proving every day that kindness, hope, and love really do lead to beautiful beginnings. The best was yet to come. The late spring sun poured through the massive windows of Julian's mansion, transforming it from the cold, empty space it had been months ago into something that finally felt like a home. Moving day had arrived, bringing with it controlled chaos and infectious excitement. "Mr. Julian, where should I put my dragon collection?" Bria asked, carrying a large box of stuffed dragons with great seriousness. "They need a good spot. Dragons are very particular. How about on the window seat in your room?" Julian suggested, leading her upstairs. "That way they can look out over the garden." "Perfect," Bria declared. "Dragons like gardens." Tyler passed them on the stairs, carrying boxes of his own belongings. "Dad, Naomi wants to know if you have a preference for where she puts the kitchen stuff." "Whatever she thinks is best," Julian called back. "This is her house now too. She can organize it however she wants." Julian paused on the landing, taking in the scene below. Movers were bringing in furniture. Naomi was directing traffic with the organizational skills of someone who had managed hospital chaos for years. Robert, still recovering but steadier every day, supervised from a comfortable chair, offering commentary and occasional laughter. This was what life was supposed to be. Messy, loud, full of people and voices and love. By evening, most of the major items were in place, though boxes remained to be unpacked. They ordered pizza for dinner and ate sitting on the floor of the living room since the dining table was buried under boxes. "To new beginnings," Robert said, raising his glass of water. "And to families that choose each other." "To borrowed moms," Bria added, making everyone laugh. "That's never getting old, is it?" Naomi asked with amusement. "Never," Julian confirmed. "It's our origin story." Over the next few weeks, they settled into a rhythm that was sometimes smooth and sometimes chaotic but always filled with the sense of belonging. Julian learned to navigate a household with 2 teenagers, one 7-year-old, one elderly man recovering from major surgery, and one very opinionated woman who had definite ideas about how things should run. Mornings were loud. Bria needed help getting ready for school, often changing outfits 3 times before settling on something. Tyler moved slowly, still rebuilding his strength, but insisted on making his own breakfast. Robert required assistance with his medications and morning routine. Naomi juggled all of this while preparing for her new role as foundation director. Julian loved every minute of it. He had converted one wing of the house into foundation offices, hiring a small staff to handle the administrative work. The official launch was planned for mid-June, and preparations were intensive. Naomi worked tirelessly, developing programs, establishing partnerships with hospitals, creating systems that would actually help families rather than drowning them in bureaucracy. "I want this to be different from traditional charities," Naomi explained during one of their planning sessions. "No extensive applications that take months to process. No means testing that makes people feel ashamed for asking for help. If a family has a sick child and needs assistance, we help them. Period." "Agreed," Julian said. "Let's make it as simple as possible. They're already dealing with enough." Tyler became increasingly involved in the foundation work, developing a peer support program that would connect young patients with each other. "When I was in the hospital feeling alone, having other kids who understood would have made such a difference," he explained. "Let's give them that." Bria appointed herself the official foundation mascot, a role she took very seriously. She insisted on being involved in all planning meetings, offering suggestions that were sometimes childlike but often surprisingly insightful. "Maybe we should give families fun stuff too, not just serious stuff," Bria suggested during one meeting. "Like games and toys and things that make kids smile. Being sick is very boring." "That's brilliant," Naomi said, making a note. "We'll include recreational therapy supplies in our assistance packages." As spring turned to summer, the family dynamics continued to evolve and strengthen. Tyler and Bria became inseparable, their age difference somehow not matching. Tyler would help Bria with her reading homework, patiently sounding out words. Bria would force Tyler to play elaborate make-believe games involving dragons and princesses and adventures. "She's exhausting," Tyler told his father one evening, but he was smiling. "But also kind of great." Julian and Naomi's relationship deepened in the small moments that filled their days. Morning coffee together before everyone else woke up. Quick kisses stolen in the hallway. Quiet conversations late at night about their dreams and fears and hopes for the future. They were building something solid, something real, taking it one day at a time as they had agreed. Robert's health continued to improve remarkably. The new heart was working perfectly, his body accepting it without complications. He began taking daily walks in the garden, slowly regaining his strength. He also became the family's unofficial storyteller, gathering the children around him in the evenings to share tales from his teaching days. "Your grandfather is a treasure," Julian told Naomi one night as they watched Robert entertain Tyler and Bria with an animated story about a particularly troublesome student from decades ago. "He is," Naomi agreed, leaning into Julian's side. "And he gets to be here because of you. Because you cared enough to help a stranger." "You weren't a stranger," Julian corrected. "You were the mother a 7-year-old offered to loan me. That made you something more than a stranger from the first moment." The foundation launch on June 15th was a major event, held at a high-end hotel with media coverage and several hundred attendees, including donors, hospital administrators, and families who had already benefited from the foundation's pre-launch pilot program. Julian gave the opening remarks, but the real impact came from the personal stories. Tyler spoke about his cancer journey and his father's transformation. A mother shared how the foundation had paid for her daughter's experimental treatment. A father described how foundation support allowed him to take medical leave to be with his son without losing their home. But the most powerful moment came when Bria, wearing a bright red dress that matched the foundation's logo colors, walked up to the microphone with no preparation, no speech, just 7-year-old honesty. "Hi," she said into the microphone. "I'm Bria Johnson. This foundation exists because I told a crying man he could borrow my mom." Laughter rippled through the crowd. "I didn't know he was rich or important," Bria continued, completely at ease in front of hundreds of people. "I just knew he was sad. And my mama always says when someone is sad, you help them. So I offered my mom because she makes everyone feel better. And then he helped my grandpa and Tyler got better and now we all live together and we're helping lots of people." She paused thinking. "I think the important part is that when you see someone who needs help, you just help them. You don't worry about if they deserve it or if you'll get something back. You just help. That's what Mr. Julian did for my family. And now we're doing it for other families. That's what kindness looks like." The crowd erupted in applause. Julian felt tears streaming down his face, and he saw he was not alone. Even hardened businesspeople in the audience were wiping their eyes. After the event, as they were packing up, a woman approached Julian. "Mr. Pierce, I'm a reporter with the national news. I'd like to do a feature on you and your family, about the foundation and this remarkable story." Julian looked at Naomi, Tyler, and Bria, who had all gathered around him. "What do you all think? It's not just my story. It's our story." "Let's do it," Tyler said immediately. "If it helps more families, we should share it." "I want to be on TV," Bria announced. "I have important things to say." Naomi laughed. "Okay, but we set boundaries. We control what gets shared and what stays private." "Absolutely," the reporter agreed. "This would be a positive piece about family, transformation, and giving back." The interview aired 2 weeks later and went viral almost immediately. The story of a crying billionaire, a compassionate child, and the family they built together resonated with people around the world. Donations poured into the foundation. Hospitals reached out wanting to partner. Families in crisis wrote asking for help. But the attention also brought challenges. Media outlets wanted more access. Strangers approached them in public. The privacy they had carefully maintained was suddenly harder to protect. One evening, about a month after the feature aired, they gathered as a family to discuss how to handle it. "I didn't think it would be this big," Tyler admitted. "People recognize me at physical therapy. It's weird. People keep asking me about the foundation at my new school," Bria said. She had just finished 2nd grade and was already worried about starting 3rd grade as the girl from that news story. "I'm sorry," Julian said. "I should have anticipated this better. Protected you all more." "Julian, stop," Naomi interrupted. "We all agreed to do the interview. And yes, it's overwhelming, but look at the good it's done. The foundation has helped 50 families in the past month alone. That's 50 families who might have gone bankrupt or given up. We can handle some attention if it means helping that many people." "Your mother is right," Robert added. "Publicity is uncomfortable, but it's temporary. The help you're providing to families, that's permanent. That changes lives." They established new boundaries. No more media interviews for a while. A PR firm to handle requests and manage their public image. Increase security when needed. They were learning to balance their desire to help with the need to protect their private family life. As summer progressed, Tyler's strength continued to improve. He was officially declared in full remission in late July, and Dr. Richardson gave him clearance to gradually return to normal activities. The look on Tyler's face when he got that news was something Julian would treasure forever. "I can go back to school in the fall?" Tyler asked, hardly daring to believe it. "Yes," Dr. Richardson confirmed. "Start slowly, half days at first, but yes, you can return to regular school." Tyler immediately turned to Julian. "Dad, can we celebrate? Like really celebrate?" "Absolutely," Julian said. "What do you want to do?" "I want to take everyone to the beach," Tyler said. "Our whole family. Just spend a week being normal. Swimming, building sandcastles with Bria, eating ice cream. Normal stuff." "Done," Julian said immediately. "I'll arrange everything." 2 weeks later, they were at a private beach house Julian had rented. For 7 days they existed in a bubble of normalcy. No foundation work, no medical appointments, no media attention. Just a family being together. Julian taught Bria to swim, patiently holding her as she kicked and splashed. Tyler built elaborate sandcastles with Bria's help, the two of them constructing an entire kingdom complete with moat and towers. Naomi and Robert sat under umbrellas, reading and watching the children with contentment. One evening, as the sun set over the ocean, Julian and Naomi walked along the beach alone while Robert supervised the kids roasting marshmallows for s'mores. "This is perfect," Naomi said, her hand in Julian's. "Just being together, no complications." "It is," Julian agreed. Then, surprising himself, he stopped walking and turned to face her. "Naomi, I know we said we'd take things slowly, build up to bigger commitments. But these past few months, watching our family come together, seeing how perfectly we all fit, I don't want to wait anymore." He pulled a small box from his pocket. "I've been carrying this around for 2 weeks trying to find the perfect moment. But I realize there is no perfect moment. Every moment with you is perfect." Naomi's hand flew to her mouth, tears already forming in her eyes. "Naomi Johnson," Julian said, opening the box to reveal a beautiful but understated ring, "will you marry me? Not because I need you to complete me, but because I want to spend the rest of my life choosing you, choosing us, choosing this beautiful family we've built." "Yes," Naomi said, crying and laughing at the same time. "Yes, of course, yes." Julian slipped the ring on her finger, then pulled her into a kiss that felt like a promise of every tomorrow to come. When they returned to the beach house, hand in hand, Tyler and Bria took one look at their faces and knew immediately what had happened. "Finally," Tyler said, grinning. "I was wondering when you'd ask her, Dad." "You knew I was going to?" Julian asked, surprised. "You bought a ring 3 weeks ago," Tyler said. "You're not as subtle as you think." Bria ran to Naomi, examining the ring with great interest. "Does this mean we're a real family now? Like officially?" "We've been a real family for months," Naomi said, kneeling to Bria's level. "The ring just makes it official in a legal way. But nothing really changes. We're still the same family." "When's the wedding?" Bria asked. "Can I wear a fancy dress? Can there be cake? Can Tyler walk you down the aisle? Can dragons?" "Slow down," Naomi laughed. "We just got engaged. We'll figure out all the details later." "Spring," Julian suggested. "Give us time to plan properly. Something small, just family and close friends." "Perfect," Naomi agreed. That night, as Julian lay in bed listening to the ocean through the open window, Naomi beside him, he reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. 8 months ago, he had been sitting on hospital steps, completely broken. Now he was engaged to an incredible woman, father to a son who was healthy and thriving, bonus father to a 7-year-old who saw magic in the world, and about to officially welcome Robert as family. The Pierce Family Foundation was helping families across the state. His relationship with Tyler was stronger than ever. He had learned how to crack eggs, build sandcastles, and be present in the ordinary moments that made life extraordinary. All of it traced back to one moment, a little girl in a green coat telling him he could borrow her mother. "What are you thinking about?" Naomi whispered in the darkness. "About how grateful I am," Julian whispered back. "For you, for our family, for every moment that led us here." "Me too," Naomi said, snuggling closer. "Though I have to admit, I'm slightly terrified of planning a wedding with Bria's help. She has very strong opinions about dragons." Julian laughed quietly. "We'll make it work. We always do." "Yes," Naomi agreed. "We always do." They fell asleep to the sound of waves and the warmth of each other, dreaming of the future they were building together, one choice, one day, one act of love at a time. 1 year. 1 full year since that cold December night when Julian had sat broken on hospital steps and a 7-year-old with red ribbons in her hair had offered him the most precious gift she had. Her mother. Now, on a warm December evening exactly 1 year later, Julian stood in the same hospital's conference room, but the circumstances could not have been more different. The room was decorated festively but tastefully, filled with families whose lives the Pierce Family Foundation had touched over the past 6 months since its official launch. Tyler, healthy and strong, his hair fully grown back and his energy returned, stood beside Julian reviewing his speech one last time. Bria, wearing a green velvet dress with a bright red ribbon in her hair, bounced excitedly near the refreshment table. Naomi, wearing her engagement ring and a beautiful blue dress that matched her eyes, coordinated last-minute details with the event staff. Robert, recovered and robust, greeted arriving guests with his characteristic warmth. This was the 1-year anniversary celebration, a chance to reflect on how far they had come and to honor the families who had inspired the foundation's mission. Dr. Richardson arrived with several of the nurses from the pediatric floor, including the staff who had cared for Tyler during his darkest days. Jordan, Ava, and Sammy, the 3 young patients Tyler had befriended, were there with their families. All 3 were doing well in their own recovery journeys. As the room filled, Julian felt Naomi slip her hand into his. "Ready?" she asked. "Absolutely," Julian said, squeezing her hand. The program began with a video montage showing the foundation's first year. Families helped, bills paid, resources provided, smiles brought to faces that had known too much worry. Then came the speeches. Julian spoke first, his words simple and from the heart. "A year ago today I was lost. I had wealth, power, and success, but I had nothing that actually mattered. Then a child taught me the most important lesson. When someone needs help, you help them. No complicated reasoning, no cost-benefit analysis, just simple human kindness." He paused, looking at his family. "That lesson transformed my life. It brought me back to my son. It gave me a new family. It showed me what I should have been doing with my resources all along. This foundation exists because of one act of compassion, and we hope to multiply that compassion 1,000 times over." Tyler spoke next, his voice clear and confident. "Cancer taught me a lot of things I wish I hadn't had to learn. But the most important lesson was about what matters. Not grades or popularity or accomplishments, but people. The people who show up when things are hard. The people who sit with you in the scary moments. The people who choose to be family even when biology says they don't have to." He looked directly at Bria. "I'm alive today partly because of medical science, partly because of an incredible doctor, but mostly because of love. My dad's love, which gave me the bone marrow I needed. And Bria's love, which gave my dad back to me when I needed him most." Several people in the audience were crying now, moved by Tyler's honest words. Then Bria approached the microphone, requiring a step stool to reach it. She looked out at the crowd with no nervousness whatsoever. "Hi everyone. I'm Bria and I'm 8 now, which is older than when this story started. Last year I found Mr. Julian crying outside the hospital. He looked very sad. So I told him he could borrow my mama because mamas make everything better." She paused as if considering how to explain something complex. "I think I was right about that. Mamas do make everything better. But you know what I learned? Sometimes dads make things better too. And sometimes brothers do. And grandpas. And friends. Actually, lots of people can make things better if they just try to help." Bria's voice got more serious, unusual for such a young child. "The foundation helps people because we all decided to help each other. Mr. Julian helped my grandpa. My mama helped Tyler. Tyler helps other kids. And now lots of people are helping lots of other people. It's like a big circle of helping." She brightened again. "Also, I have a family now. A big, weird, wonderful family. And next spring there's going to be a wedding and I get to be the flower girl and there might be dragons. So everything worked out perfect." The room erupted in laughter and applause. Bria curtsied and skipped back to her seat, completely satisfied with her speech. After several more testimonials from families who had been helped, the formal program concluded. People mingled, shared stories, and celebrated together. Julian found himself approached by a couple with a young son. "Mr. Pierce," the mother said, her eyes welling with tears, "I want you to meet Nathan. He's 6. He has leukemia. Your foundation paid for his treatment last month when we had exhausted all our resources. Because of you, my son is getting the care he needs." Julian knelt to Nathan's level. "Hi Nathan. How are you feeling?" "Better," Nathan said shyly. "The medicine is yucky but it's working." "I'm so glad," Julian said, then looked up at the parents. "I'm honored the foundation could help. You shouldn't have to choose between your child's health and financial security. The world needs more people like you, the father said. Julian shook his head. The world needs more people like all of us choosing to help each other. That's what makes the difference. As the evening continued, Julian watched his family work the room. Tyler was deep in conversation with Jordan and Ava, the three of them planning some kind of peer support initiative. Bria was showing her flower girl dress sketches to anyone who would look. Robert was sharing teaching stories with a group of parents. Naomi was discussing foundation expansion plans with several hospital administrators. This was what life was supposed to be. Connected, purposeful, filled with love and meaning. Later, as the event was winding down, Dr. Richardson pulled Julian aside. I wanted to tell you something. In my 30 years as a pediatric oncologist, I've seen a lot of families face impossible situations. Most of them just try to survive. But you, Julian, you turned your crisis into a mission. You took your pain and used it to ease other people's pain. That's extraordinary. I just did what anyone should do, Julian said. No, Dr. Richardson corrected. You did what anyone could do if they chose to. Most people don't make that choice. You did, and hundreds of families are better for it. As they drove home that night, the family car filled with comfortable chatter, Julian reflected on the doctor's words. He had made a choice. On those hospital steps a year ago, when Bria offered to loan him her mother, he could have politely declined, kept his walls up, continued in his isolated existence. But he had accepted the help. He had chosen vulnerability over pride. And that choice had led to every good thing that followed. Dad, you're being quiet, Tyler observed from the passenger seat. What are you thinking about? Just grateful, Julian said. For all of this. For you being healthy. For our family. For the chance to make a difference. We're grateful too, Naomi said from the back seat where she sat with Bria and Robert. For you. For your courage to change. My courage. Julian laughed. I wasn't courageous. I was desperate and broken. Same thing sometimes, Robert said wisely. Courage often looks like desperation. The bravest thing you can do is admit you need help and then accept it when it's offered. If this story moved you, please subscribe and share it with someone who needs to be reminded that it's never too late to change, to heal, and to build the life you're meant to live. Your comments and shares help spread messages of hope and kindness. When they arrived home, Bria was already asleep, and Julian carried her to her room, tucking her in carefully. He looked around the room at the dragon collection on the window seat, the drawings covering the walls, the evidence of a well-loved, happy child. 1 year ago, this room had been empty like the rest of the house. Now it was full of life just like every room in the house. Julian found Naomi in their bedroom, removing her jewelry. Have I told you today that I love you? He asked. Yes, Naomi smiled. But I never get tired of hearing it. I love you, Julian said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. And I can't wait to marry you in the spring. Are you ready for Bria to plan our wedding? Naomi asked with amusement. Because she has a lot of ideas, many of them involving dragons. I'm ready for anything, Julian said. As long as I end up married to you, the details don't matter. Even if there are dragons? Naomi teased. Especially if there are dragons, Julian confirmed. Bria's dragons are non-negotiable. They stood there for a moment, holding each other, grateful for the life they were building. Over the next few months, as winter turned to spring, wedding plans took shape. True to her word, Bria was heavily involved, and yes, there were dragon elements incorporated into the design. But it was beautiful, intimate, and perfect. The wedding took place in the garden of their home on a sunny April morning. Tyler walked Naomi down the aisle, a role he had specifically requested. Bria took her duties as flower girl very seriously, distributing petals with careful precision. Robert officiated, having become ordained specifically for this purpose. The guest list was small. Close friends, the hospital staff who had become family, the families they had helped through the foundation, and Dr. Richardson. Everyone who had been part of their journey to this moment. As Julian watched Naomi walk toward him, Tyler at her side, Bria scattering flowers ahead of them, Robert waiting to perform the ceremony, he felt overwhelmingly grateful. Grateful for the hard moments that had led here. Grateful for the people who had helped them heal. Grateful for second chances and found families and the courage to be vulnerable. The ceremony was simple but meaningful. When it came time for vows, Julian spoke from his heart. Naomi, you saved my life. Not by fixing me but by seeing me, accepting me, and showing me what really matters. You taught me how to be present, how to love, how to build a life instead of just accumulating things. I promise to choose you every day, to show up even when it's hard, and to build our family with the same kindness you showed me from the very first moment." Naomi's vows were equally heartfelt. "Julian, you showed me that it's okay to accept help, that pride shouldn't prevent us from receiving what we need. You've given my family security, love, and hope. But more than that, you've given me a partner who understands that family is not about perfection but about showing up. I promise to choose you every day, to support your continued growth, and to build our life together with honesty, compassion, and joy." When Robert pronounced them married, the small gathering erupted in applause. Tyler and Bria rushed forward, wrapping their arms around their parents in a group hug that photographer captured perfectly. The reception was held in the garden, simple and joyful. There was dancing, laughter, stories shared, and yes, a cake decorated with subtle dragon details that made Bria beam with pride. At one point, Julian found himself standing with Tyler, both of them watching Naomi dance with Bria. "Mom would have liked her," Tyler said quietly. "She would have been happy you found someone good." "I think so too," Julian agreed. "And Tyler, I want you to know that loving Naomi doesn't diminish what your mother and I had. It's just a different chapter." "I know, Dad," Tyler said, putting an arm around his father's shoulders. "And I'm glad you found this chapter. You deserve to be happy." As the sun set and the reception continued under string lights, Julian had a moment of perfect clarity. This was the best gift of all. Not the wealth he had accumulated, not the success he had achieved, not even the foundation they had built. The best gift was right here. Tyler healthy and thriving. Naomi, now his wife, dancing with their daughter. Robert, recovered and vibrant, telling stories to a rapt audience. Bria, her green dress twirling as she danced, completely joyful and secure in the love surrounding her. Family. Chosen, fought for, built one day at a time through showing up and being present and having the courage to accept help when it was offered. Later that night, after guests had departed and children had been put to bed, Julian and Naomi stood on their bedroom balcony, looking out over the garden where they had just been married. "Happy?" Naomi asked. "Beyond happy," Julian confirmed. "Complete. Content. Grateful." "Me too," Naomi said, leaning against him. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment before Julian spoke again. "Do you ever think about how different things could have been? If Bria hadn't seen me crying that night? If I had refused her offer? Sometimes," Naomi admitted, "but I try not to dwell on what is. I'd rather focus on what is. And what is pretty perfect." "It really is," Julian agreed. As they headed inside, Naomi stopped. "Julian, I should tell you something. I'm pregnant." Julian stared at her, hardly comprehending. "What? Really? How long have you known?" 2 weeks, Naomi said, smiling at his shocked expression. "I wanted to wait until after the wedding to tell you." "Surprise?" Julian pulled her into a careful hug, laughing with joy. "That's the best surprise. Another child. Our child. Tyler and Bria are going to lose their minds," Naomi predicted. "In the best way," Julian said. They told the family the next morning over breakfast. Tyler's face split into a huge grin. "I'm going to have another sibling? That's amazing." Bria's reaction was even more enthusiastic. "A baby? Can we name it Dragon? Please, can we name it Dragon?" "Probably not Dragon," Naomi said, trying not to laugh. "But you can help pick the name. As long as it has dragon energy," Bria said seriously. "That's very important." Robert wiped tears from his eyes. A new generation. A fresh start. Life just keeps getting better. Over the months that followed, as Naomi's pregnancy progressed, the family continued to grow and evolve. The foundation expanded its reach, helping more families across multiple states. Tyler returned to school full-time and even joined the basketball team, determined to reclaim the normal teenage life cancer had stolen. Bria started 3rd grade with confidence, secure in her family's love. And Julian continued to show up, every single day, as the man he had become rather than the man he used to be. He never forgot the lesson that had changed everything. When someone needs help, you help them. Simple, powerful, transformative. When their baby was born in the early fall, a healthy girl with her mother's eyes and her father's smile, they named her Hope Rebecca Pierce. Hope for the future they were building. Rebecca in honor of the woman who had first shown Julian what love and family could be. Bria was enchanted with her baby sister, though disappointed they didn't name her Dragon. "That's okay," she decided. "I'll teach her about dragons myself." The christening took place in their garden, with the same small group who had witnessed the wedding. Dr. Richardson attended, as did many of the families the foundation had helped. Jordan, Ava, and Sammy, all doing well in their own journeys, came to celebrate. As Julian held baby Hope, surrounded by Tyler, Bria, Naomi, and Robert, he felt a peace so profound it was almost overwhelming. This was what he had been missing for so long. This sense of purpose, of connection, of belonging to something larger than himself. A photographer captured the moment. Julian with Hope in his arms, Naomi beside him, Tyler and Bria pressed close, Robert looking on with pride. The family, complete and whole and choosing each other every day. Later, as the celebration wound down and Hope slept peacefully in her nursery, Julian found himself in Bria's room. She was supposed to be sleeping but was instead sitting up in bed, looking thoughtful. "Can't sleep?" Julian asked, sitting on the edge of her bed. "I was just thinking," Bria said. "About that night I found you crying. I almost didn't stop. I almost just walked past because Mama says not to talk to strangers. But you looked so sad." "I'm very glad you stopped," Julian said. "Your kindness changed everything, Bria." "I know," Bria said with characteristic confidence. "But Mr. Julian, can I tell you a secret?" "Of course." "I knew you were going to be important," Bria said seriously. "When I saw you crying I just knew. Like how I know when Mama is sad even when she's smiling. I knew you needed help and I knew we could help you. So I told you to borrow Mama." Julian felt tears prick his eyes. "You have a very special gift, Bria. You see people's hearts." "Grandpa says I got it from Grandma," Bria said. She could see hearts too. "Well, I'm grateful you have it," Julian said, tucking her blanket around her. "And I'm grateful you saw mine that night and decided it was worth saving." "All hearts are worth saving," Bria said as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. "You just have to try." As Julian left her room and headed back downstairs, he reflected on those words. All hearts are worth saving. You just have to try. That simple philosophy, carried by an 8-year-old, was the foundation of everything good in his life now. That willingness to see suffering and respond to it. That choice to help rather than walk past. That courage to be vulnerable and accept assistance when it was offered. He found Naomi in the living room watching the baby monitor. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Perfect," Naomi said. "Just thinking about how much has changed in less than 2 years." "Everything has changed," Julian agreed, sitting beside her. "And all because you and Bria showed a broken man kindness when he needed it most." "You did the work," Naomi reminded him. "We just opened the door. You chose to walk through it." "Best decision I ever made," Julian said, pulling her close. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the monitor as their baby daughter slept peacefully, listening to the sounds of their home, their family, their life. Upstairs, Tyler was probably on his phone, texting friends or doing homework, living the normal teenage life he had fought so hard to reclaim. Bria was falling asleep, dreaming whatever dreams 8-year-olds have. Robert was reading in his room, grateful for every day he got to be here with his family. And Hope, their newest addition, slept with the complete trust only babies have. This was the gift. This was what mattered. Not the mansion or the wealth or the business empire or even the foundation, though all of those things had their place. The real treasure was right here. People who chose each other, who showed up through hard times and good, who built a life together one ordinary moment at a time. Julian had spent 42 years accumulating things that didn't matter and missing what did. Then a 7-year-old had told him he could borrow her mother, and everything changed. That one small act of kindness had cascaded into healing, growth, love, and a family that was proof that hope, kindness, and love really do always lead to beautiful beginnings. "What are you thinking?" Naomi asked, noting his distant expression. "Just grateful," Julian said. "For you, for our children, for every moment that led us here. For Bria, who saw a crying stranger and offered the most valuable thing she had. She'd tell you it was no big deal," Naomi said, smiling. "That it was just the obvious thing to do. And that's exactly why it was such a big deal," Julian said. "Because to her, kindness is the obvious choice. We should all be more like Bria. The world would be a much better place," Naomi agreed. They sat together a while longer, then headed upstairs, checking on each child as they passed their rooms. Tyler, asleep with his phone still in his hand. Bria, curled up with one of her stuffed dragons. Hope, peaceful in her crib, tiny hands curled into fists. As Julian finally climbed into bed, exhausted and content, he thought about the journey that had brought him here. The pain of loss. The isolation of grief. The moment of crisis that forced him to face what he'd become. The unexpected kindness from strangers who became family. The hard work of healing, growing, and learning to be present. It hadn't been easy. There had been setbacks, struggles, moments of fear and doubt. But through it all, they had chosen each other. They had shown up. They had loved through the difficulties. And that, Julian realized, was the truest measure of family. Not the absence of problems but the commitment to face them together. Not perfection but presence. Not grand gestures but consistent, daily choices to love, to help, to be there. As he drifted off to sleep, Naomi warm beside him, he said a quiet thank you to the universe, to Rebecca's memory, to fate or chance or whatever force had led a 7-year-old girl to stop and help a crying stranger that December night. Thank you for the brokenness that made healing possible. Thank you for the darkness that made him appreciate the light. Thank you for the loss that taught him what truly mattered. And thank you for the gift of second chances, found families, and the knowledge that it's never too late to become who you were always meant to be. Outside, stars shone over the mansion that was finally a home, watching over a family that had chosen each other, built each other up, and proved that when kindness, hope, and love lead the way, beautiful beginnings are always possible. The end was really just a beginning. Not the end of struggle or challenge, but the beginning of facing those things together as a family, committed to showing up for each other every single day. And somewhere in her room, in a green coat hanging in her closet, the ribbons from that fateful December night were carefully preserved. A small reminder of the moment everything changed, when a child decided that a crying man needed help, and offered him the most precious thing she had. Her mother. And in borrowing that mother for one night, Julian Pierce had found so much more. He had found his way back to his son. He had found love again. He had found purpose and meaning. He had found that money only matters when you use it to make the world better. He had found that family is not just who you're born to, but who you choose and who chooses you back. Most importantly, he had found himself. The man he was meant to be all along. The man Rebecca had always seen in him. The man Tyler needed. The man Naomi could love. The man who understood that showing up was everything. All because a little girl had seen someone who needed help and decided, with the simple wisdom only children possess, that helping was the obvious choice. That was the best gift of all. Not any single moment or achievement, but the accumulation of ordinary days filled with extraordinary love. Family dinners and homework help and bedtime stories. Scraped knees and birthday parties and quiet conversations. The beautiful mundane reality of choosing each other over and over again, building a life that mattered. Julian Pierce had everything he had always wanted. Not because he had bought it or earned it or deserved it, but because he had finally learned to accept it when it was freely offered. And he would spend the rest of his life paying that kindness forward, one family at a time, one act of compassion at a time, proving that Bria had been right all along. When someone needs help, you just help them. That's what kindness looks like. That's what love means. And that's how you build a life worth living. The best gift of all was the gift of understanding that. Finally, completely, and forever.